So any questions, like whatnot, like I don't have like a big spiel prepared. I'm just going to, I'll start with like a basic meta history, like history of the character as a comic book character, as opposed to the specific like iteration of Black Adam that's currently canon. And then we can, I'll open it up for like general questions, and we can just talk about the character for a bit.
This is great.
Is the basic thought.
Yeah, it's good for me to learn and then look forward to it in a movie.
Indeed, same here.
The Men of Steel podcast. I'm Case Sagan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jmike Folson.
Hello. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back indeed. Today is a very special episode because we are about to take a step back into the theaters for what you might say is a real movie. And
we hope.
Thus, I hope. Because coming up is the rock vehicle Black Adam, and I wanted to do a little bit of a primer on the character. So for this episode, we are joined by Hans Martin Jr., the Real Movie Critic.
What's up, y'all?
And Steven Angulo, the CineGuy.
Why, hello.
Yeah, so we just wanted to do a primer on the character of Black Adam, and part of this was motivated because we want to talk about the movie Black Adam when it comes out, and that's going to be over on your show, The Real Movie Critic versus the CineGuy.
Oh, yes. Looking forward to it.
Indeed.
But over here, we wanted to have just a general conversation about the character, what we're expecting for the movie, maybe a little bit. But I figured we'd open with me saying a basic, broad history of the character as a comic book character, and then we can have some conversations about that all, because that's a thing that we like doing on the show, and it's been a while because of, stuff
time
in the world.
I mean, what do you mean, Case? What kind of stuff in the world?
Yeah. Well, and also like releases have been coming at weird times. Like they like keep sneaking up on me, or they come out in theaters and then also on streaming, and it's like, when do we do it relative?
Yeah.
Like, if can I make it in time for the weekend, or do we wait for it to come on video? But not this one, because this is a movie I have been asking for since I was in high school in like 2001.
Is there a particular reason why, Case? Is there a reason why?
Well, if as listeners of the show should be aware, the Shazam property of comics is my favorite comic of all time. Like Captain Marvel, the Shazam Captain Marvel has always been my favorite character, and he's thoroughly tied to the Superman archetype. So it's all a big whirlwind of love for this type of archetypal figure. But I do love me some Captain Marvel, and Black Adam is traditionally his arch nemesis. Sort of, and I'll talk about that in a second. And The Rock, I have always thought would be great for the part, going back to the Scorpion King.
Really?
Wow.
Wow, the Scorpion King? Wow.
Yeah, and like I wasn't sure about it during The Mummy 2, but once he got his own movie, and I was like, oh, it's Egyptian Conan the Barbarian.
I mean, he has come a long way.
Parts for you.
He has come a long way from his actor since the Scorpion King.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like he looked badass in The Mummy 2 for the 5 minutes he was on screen,
and that horrible CGI at the end.
Yeah.
Well, right, and then
we don't talk about that.
Totally miscast by the CG construct that they used. That was a thing of nightmares, and not for the reasons they wanted it to be. but yeah, like once they did the movie The Scorpion King, which is a flawed movie, but it's interesting. Like I think it has like a really cool design, and he was playing this like cool Egyptian barbarian character. I was like, oh yeah, I have two very distinct characters I would love for him to play, and both of them are in this movie that's coming out. Because there's Hawkman, who notoriously is a reincarnated Egyptian pharaoh who wields maces and cracks people over the head with it. And then there's Black Adam, who has ties to Egypt, and they change depending on which version we're talking about.
Yeah.
Not that he's more complicated than Hawkman. Hawkman is like way more complicated to explain. We don't have like 5 hours. But yeah, so let's start with just like a general conversation about who the character is. So obviously he has close ties with Shazam, And by that, I mean both the wizard, but also then the property and some, however you want to say the character. He normally is depicted in a black version of the same basic costume as Captain Marvel. And that's because he is a champion of the wizard Shazam. He is supposed to be an earlier champion in the history of characters being given this power, which includes Shazam. Most versions of Shazam are depicted as having been gifted powers by the gods and having a similar transformation mechanism between his fully mortal form and his empowered form. And there's a transmutational effect when you gain these powers that change things like your longevity, your physical appearance in both, like the obvious way, like Captain Marvel becomes an adult. But there is a little bit of a question of, is he becoming an adult version of him, or is he becoming an adult version of something else? Like there was this idea in the 90s that he was actually turning into his father. He was literally invoking the visage of his father as this protector type character. So that, like, there's a transformational aspect to it, but he's still fundamentally Billy transformed through this magic kind of as a conduit, because then there's a conversation of, is he actually Billy in terms of personality? Like, is he Billy but is it big, or is he his own character as Captain Marvel, even if that transformational effect is occurring? Long story short, Black Adam has something kind of similar going on. So the idea was that Black Adam, who was introduced way back, actually I have the date in front of me, it was 1945. So it goes back a pretty long way in the comic book pantheon. But the twist on that one is that Black Adam actually only had one appearance back in the Golden Age, because he dies at the end of his first appearance, and was not brought back. And when Captain Marvel folded in like 1950-ish, wherever, like 50, maybe a little bit later, maybe it was like 53, whenever the whole like faucet collapsed situation occurred because of the DC lawsuits, Black Adam had not reappeared in any meaningful way. It was only when DC later bought the property and brought him back that he was reintroduced as a big character. So the idea was, old school Black Adam was an Egyptian character who was empowered as an adult by the wizard Shazam and became the champion Teth Adam at the time, or Mighty Adam, pardon me, in the old comics. So he was Mighty Adam. He was the hero of Egypt. He was just a regular superhero, and he had the exact same situation as Shazam, although a different pantheon of gods. So it was Shu, Haru, Aten, Zehuti, Aman, and Mayhem, I think, is the breakdown on that one.
Your guess is good as mine right now.
Yes.
No
matter what, Shu, Horus, Aman, Zehuti, Aten, Mayhem. Sorry.
Gesundheit.
It's like that song from Prince of Egypt. Playing with the big boys now.
Well, and so it's the same basic idea that he's getting these attributes from these deities, and it's a fun flex of like, oh, Egyptian pantheon, that's cool. Long story short, though, this character, Mighty Adam, once he gets his powers and he saves Egypt from like whatever forces they're fighting, immediately is like, well, obviously I'm your king now, right? And they're like,
I guess.
Did we agree to this? And it's like, well, I guess we have to, right? And then it's like, yep, I'm the king. And Shazam is like, hey, that's like literally what I said don't do. And instead flings him to the farthest corner of the universe. And so this is in ancient Egyptian times. And so ever since that point when that occurred, Black Adam has been flying back from the farthest corner of the universe. And he finally arrives in 1945. And so he shows up, and the Marvels confront him. And at this point, we have gotten to our like classic Marvel family of Billy, Mary, and Freddy, and also Uncle Dudley, like Uncle Marvel. And at this point, the Lieutenants Marvel are less seen figures in this all. Like the Shazam family is very big. Like even before we got to the modern day Shazamily, there's always been a lot of characters in this whole roster of individuals.
Is it bigger than the Bat family?
I mean, they're the ones who started the idea of a family. You know, like Batman had Robin as like the first like sidekick.
It can't be a family.
Was that your Vin Diesel voice?
Yeah, that's right.
God, can you imagine like Captain Marvel reinterpreted through the lens of Fast and the Furious?
Oh my gosh.
I guess that's not that crazy because of Aquaman, Justin Lin.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, true.
It could happen.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. But so
Well,
Black
not
Adam
really.
shows
They
up.
got beef now. the Rock and Vin Diesel got beef. It's probably not going to happen.
Well, I'm just saying through the lens, like it just shot because like I'm not saying recast him as Vin Diesel, but if it became very much, it's just like, hey, you're messing with my family. You're messing with my Shazamily.
I would watch that. I'm not going to lie. I would watch that.
Yeah, no, I would watch that a billion times over. But anyway, so Black Adam finally arrives. It took him from, at that point, what, like 8,000 years to fly from, depending on, I don't know what point in Egypt. You know, the whole, like, the Egyptian, like, the Bronze Age Egypt that we understand to exist went for 6,000 years. And, like, we very easily blur the details of, like, what happened in the Old Kingdom versus the Middle Kingdom versus the New Kingdom. And, like, the New Kingdom is called that because it's still 2,000 years old. Like, you know, we're talking about like a really crazy scope of time, and I have no idea where like Black Adam was supposed to be from in that original story. Like it was back there. Like there were pyramids, something like whatever. Anyway, but he arrives in 1945. He confronts the Shazamily, and they can't really beat him because he's exactly their match in terms of powers. Later versions will do stuff to explain why there's discrepancies on this one, but he's a perfect match at this point, and like they're all effectively unstoppable. So like an unstoppable thing against an immovable object, and like nothing really happens. So what ends up saving the day initially when this confrontation occurs is that Uncle Dudley, who is a character in the Captain Marvel mythos, but is not really in Shazam. I think they make a reference to him in the most recent movie, but it's not like front and center. It's a silly thing. It's hard to properly explain. Uncle Dudley is a character who dresses up in a Captain Marvel costume, but actually has no powers and just pretends to be part of the family. And they're all cool with it because they love him. But yes, exactly. Like Superman's like, sure, buddy, you can travel with me. But so Uncle Dudley, Billy's Uncle Dudley, is like, yeah, you know, you can, like we're all matched here because of you know that, and then he like stumbles over the name for the wizard a couple of times, and like Black Adam goes like, you idiot, it's Shazam, and then gets hit by lightning and turns into his mortal form of Teth Adam, and then, because he's been alive for thousands of years, but just preserved by being in his Black Adam form, his body then withers away to dust. And that's just it. That was it for Black Adam.
Oh, wow.
So he dies a lot, this guy.
Well, yeah. So he flat out just like died right there. Was gone because this sort of also addressed like, all right, so what's the deal with their powers? Like, how does it work? And it's like, all right, yeah, the Billy body, or like the Captain Marvel body, will continue to function, but like Billy is still aging behind the scenes. Like he's not like, it's not Miracle Man where it's like literally on pause depending on which body's out there. So like this was the first time where they really kind of address like, all right, what is Billy's age being slowed down by turning into Captain Marvel? Like what's going on there? And yes, apparently it is, but nothing can happen to him in the interim. So it's not like Mighty Man where where he has to turn back into the normal form in order because that body still has to eat and like take, you know, like still has to function. And if it's like stuck in the Mighty Man form, it's actually like withering away and dying in a different reality. So in this case, it's in stasis, but it is still aging normally. So that was it for that era. And that's because like there are a lot of characters in the Captain Marvel pantheon that can fight Captain Marvel. So like Black Adam wasn't particularly, you know, he was not particularly special, and he actually was the least visually distinct of them all. Because there are the biggest one actually back in the day is a character named Ibak, who had the same basic deal. It was like Ivan the Terrible. I forget the whole breakdown. Attila the Hun. It's also an acronym situation, but he could fight Captain Marvel pretty regularly. Savannah's son actually was able to fight Captain Marvel, but that was more back when Captain Marvel wasn't really established as powerful as he would become in the course of it. And then there was Sabak, who was a demon themed version of the same concept of like, say the word and then take the powers. And that character, so it was like Satan, Azazel, Beelzebub, you know, like that whole situation right there. That character actually was not a Captain Marvel villain so much as a Captain Marvel Jr. villain. And because Captain Marvel Jr. was also fiercely popular.
I didn't know there was a junior. Wow.
Yeah. So it's Freddy. It's the one on the crutches in the first movie.
Gotcha.
Oh.
So
Yeah,
they call him
like
Junior?
Yeah, so he was Captain Marvel Jr., which, but his special word to transform was Captain Marvel because he drew his powers from Captain Marvel, not from Shazam.
Oh my goodness.
And so every time he said his actual name, he would transform. And it was like a joke. It would be like, hey, what was your name again? You can call me Junior.
Gotcha.
Right. So, and that was kind of a fun device there. Captain Marvel Jr. Was Elvis Presley's most favorite superhero, and that's why all of his costumes later in life had that Captain Marvel design to it, because he was obsessed with Captain Marvel Jr.
Interesting.
Fun little tweak there. Anyway, Captain Marvel Jr. had his own book. He had plenty of stories by himself, and generally they were more adult themed, ironically. And so Sabak was his rival character, because they could get away with a little bit more demonic imagery and whatnot in that book. Whereas the main Captain Marvel book was a bit more cartoony. So, it's weird which book is which, but I mean they're both they're both child / early teen characters who transform into superheroes. Just one turns into an adult superhero. But yeah, so lots of villains back in the day, and also comics weren't quite as driven by big fights, although there are some. There's actually a really cool Captain Marvel fight with a character who looks a lot like Black Adam called Mr. Z, and that issue was drawn by Jack Kirby, and it's just a throwdown fight. Where they're ripping through buildings and whatnot. It's really cool. And like I said, he looks just like Black Adam, but he has a mustache and a Z instead of a lightning bolt on his chest.
The evil,
and then it turns out he's a robot. But
evil twirling mustache.
Well,
And then,
Why oughta?
yeah, but I mean, it was the style at the time. But it turned out that was a robot, and it was a one-off, because Jack Kirby did some Captain Marvel stuff, but he wasn't the main artist on the book ever. But it shows the evolution of where comics would eventually go to. Anyway, so cut to DC sues Fawcett Comics because Captain Marvel supposedly is too much like Superman, even though at the time Captain Marvel first appeared, Superman could not fly. So in terms of their powers, there was a big discrepancy there. But that whole thing kind of shifted around, and courts dismissed it, and then certain courts would accept it when they appealed, and then Fawcett would appeal and countersue. There was a whole thing, and it went on for years. And eventually, even though there are multiple rulings that came down on DC's side, the big reason why the comic company folded was just because at this point comics as a whole had started to fade in terms of popularity, and this had been very costly. So regardless of the actual rulings involved of can you use this character or whatnot, it was just this is just cut our losses. We don't want to deal with this industry anymore. It is too expensive. Everything's too annoying. A lot of books were moving away from superhero comics at this point. It was just the time. It's the end of the golden age. And then you have this little gap of time where there's only a few superhero comics being published, and instead it's mostly funny animals and romance comics and horror comics. And weirdly, during this period, Hoppy the Marvel Bunny continues being published because he's a funny animal book. And it's the rights are bought out, and that's why there's a different costume design for him for a while there. And, over in Great Britain, where superhero comics didn't really die out, that's where Marvel Man comes in, where they take the Captain Marvel concept and then they just rewrite his origin to be science instead of magic, but it's the same kid turns into an adult superhero thing. And their version of Black Adam was Nasty Man.
Nasty Man? Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Why? The name.
Yeah, and his sidekick, Kid Nasty Man.
Kid Nasty? What?
Yeah.
That sounds like a rapper from today, actually.
Oh my. Wow.
Kid Nasty.
Yeah, weird stuff going on over there. Anyway, so the Flash shows up in Showcase. What is it? Showcase 15? I forget which issue exactly. But anyway, the Flash shows up in his first appearance, or the Silver Age Flash, Barry Allen, and that's considered the start of the Silver Age of comics. So that launches DC's line at that point. So you get Flash, you get Green Lantern, you get eventually Justice League and Martian Manhunter, Martian Manhunter then Justice League. And simultaneously, the publishers for at the time Timely Comics, I think they were Atlas at this point, would regularly play golf with the publisher for DC, and they would talk about how successful these books are going. And so the publisher for Atlas went to his editor-in-chief and said, "Hey, superhero comics are really popular, especially team books. You have to do one. I am requiring you to do so." So this company that had been surviving on these weird monster comics that they would do, a lot of kaiju kind of stuff. So this editor-in-chief Stan Lee, goes to his artist for his monster books, Jack Kirby, and they make the Fantastic Four, and then the comic company becomes Marvel, and there it goes. And then this becomes the Silver Age, like, comics war, like the real big two fight, because like the Golden Age didn't have a direct equivalent to DC the same way. So this starts, it's kind of like the 16-bit era with like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Like this is the real point of like competition between lines. There's still other lines out there and people are doing books and so forth. But these two are going at it. Then we get to the 70s and there's a lot of like fan response to like the old Captain Marvel stuff. So first up, Marvel Comics rushes the character of Captain Marvel into existence, which is the Marvel version, which is like an alien spy on Earth, so that they can hold on to the name Captain Marvel, because at this point they're Marvel Comics, so they wanted the name to be locked down. DC, wanting to get a hold of this character who had previously been so popular, does so, and is not allowed to call the book Captain Marvel because of trademark issues. It's not that they can't call the character Captain Marvel, and in fact they can even say Captain Marvel on the cover. They just can't call the title of the book Captain Marvel or some variation of that. So like when they relaunched a series of Captain Marvel books after testing the waters with a character called Captain Thunder, who is just Captain Marvel but with a sun design for some reason on his chest, and draws nature powers instead of Greek gods, but he's from another Earth, and he's well, so it's the same red design. Like he looks just like Captain Marvel, except the sun instead of a lightning bolt. But no, it's more like animal stuff. So it's like strength of the bison and like swiftness of the hawk kind of thing. Although I think a tornado might be in there. He has the acronym Thunder. So I think it's like tornado, hawk, something like that. Anyway, so they want to do a Captain Marvel book. They come up with this whole premise that off screen, all of the major characters had been put in suspended animation, and so they come back, and so the world has moved on. But a lot of it's kind of like the Snap in Endgame, where a bunch of people are like taken off the board, and then 5 years go on, and then they come back, and now like they have to deal with their lives. So we're getting that situation here with like Billy and Savannah and like all these characters, and they decide to bring back Black Adam. Finally getting back to the character in question. So they decide that they want to have like an actual like real rival, because Ibak, as interesting as he was, is still like is way more like a barbarian villain as opposed to a direct rival. Like Ibak typically wears pants and no shirt and has like a mohawk and is just like this big thug type character who can go toe to toe with Captain Marvel, but it's like it's a particular vibe as opposed to like, okay, here's evil Captain Marvel. It's the difference between Zod and Bizarro. And so they bring back Black Adam. I forget what excuse they use, but it's like a resurrection type situation. And from that point on, he becomes like a mainstay villain. Like he's very present in crossovers. He shows up in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and like in the background, because he's just a villain. Like it's like he's a bad guy for Captain Marvel to fight, who is on the same power level. And so there's some cool fights. Like Superman fights him a couple of times. There's crossover. There are some great Captain Marvel Superman crossovers from this 70s era, because they could do stories where like, oh yeah, they're about the same power and they can swap villains who are used to fighting similar type ones. And they lived on different Earths. So like the story, but Captain Marvel had a means of traversing it by way of the Rock of Eternity. His magic meant he could go back and forth the same way like the Flash can do a lot of different reality stories, because the idea is the Flash vibrates to travel between dimensions and can do it under his own power, versus like Batman can't natively go to Earth 2. Like it requires a bit more. It's not part of his usual world of how to do things. So there's all these like good Captain Marvel Superman crossover stories. We get Black Adam repeating because he's a big heavy hitter that can fight Superman. Like there aren't that many characters in DC. So weirdly, the fact that a lot of them come from the Captain Marvel franchise is cool. I find that fun. They kind of forget about Sabak. I don't think Sabak ever shows up again during this period, like during the Bronze Age period before Crisis on Infinite Earths. But yeah, so Black Adam gets kind of reestablished and becomes really like the canonical arch rival for Captain Marvel. Cut to Crisis on Infinite Earths. They're not sure what they're going to do with the characters once they do this like consolidated universe. There is a mini in the 80s, which is something Shazam. I forget the name of it, but it's the one where he's like Savannah's directly his uncle, whatnot. Anyway, Black Adam shows up for that. His arrival. It's pretty much unchanged from the basic idea. I don't even remember what they do for his origin, but then we get to the 90s with the Power of Shazam, and that's where we actually get to the big shift in things. So in the 90s, when we get to the Power of Shazam book, Jerry Ordway takes it over. Jmike, you and I read this for Comics Quest for Long Haul. So Jerry Ordway takes it over, and he launches it with a graphic novel just called The Power of Shazam. First Thunder, not First Thunder. There is a subtitle, but it's not on the original printing, so I forget what it's called. Either way, it sets this up where Black Adam is now, instead of being still alive from ancient Egypt, but being the reincarnation of his self from ancient Egypt. Like, that's the first big twist there. So in this whole story of it, and there's like this weird time element that goes on with it all, so that like it looks like the 40s, but it's also set in the present day. Because Captain Marvel is such a character of this like golden age of comics kind of thing that it always feels weird having him be like too modern. But they established that Billy and Mary's parents were archaeologists, and they were working with Theo Adam, who was like their handler, like their grease man on the ground, like the one who talked to locals and like could set them up with stuff. There's a different term for that. For journalists, there's like a term for it when like who your contact on the ground is. And Theo was that. Like he knew the locals. He could function pretty well, but he was also kind of a brute. He was a lot like Clayton from Disney's Tarzan, like down to the look. Aside from him not having a mustache, because no evil mustache for him. But so he's actually being paid for by Savannah. Savannah's like financing this whole thing, and his job there is to find anything valuable for Savannah and make sure that like he gets first crack while they're doing this excavation of this like cool pyramid. So they find this chamber that's dedicated to Teth Adam, and they find this amulet that is like resonating with all this power. And Theo is like, I'm fucking stealing that thing. And so Billy's dad is like, no, you're not fucking stealing this thing. Like, you're only allowed to like take pictures and get like publicity stuff for this expedition. Like, we're not stealing from Egypt. Like you know, they're very aware of like the colonial reputation when we look back at this time. Jerry Ordway is a good person. But so in response to this, Theo kills Billy and Mary's parents. So he's the reason why they're orphans, and that sets them off on their whole like pathway to become superheroes. He steals this amulet. He goes back to the States. The feds come after him. He tries to hide the evidence by like blowing up the radio tower that is like broadcasting information about it all. And Captain Marvel interferes, and he's like, wait, I remember this shit. He goes back to Savannah's place, takes the amulet, he says Shazam, turns into Black Adam. And so that's how we get the post-crisis Black Adam that would become sort of the starting point of his turn to heroism.
That was a dark comic.
It was.
It
Surprisingly
started off
so.
super dark.
It's a great book, and it's weirdly optimistic at the same time, but like they do show someone's throat getting cut. It's like in very clear detail. It's a weird juxtaposition there.
Yeah.
That said, if you're not a small child, I recommend it. If you're honestly less than 12, I would say probably think about it. Or probably don't. If you're over 12, you're probably fine. It's not like that crazy. Anyway, so they set this up that Theo Adam is the reincarnation of Teth Adam, who had been stripped of his powers, blah, blah, blah. And Theo is a shitbag. And so when he first gets the powers, he is like, he's getting memories of Teth, but it's not innately there. It's like the Donald Blake Thor situation, where at first Donald Blake thought he was Donald Blake, and then he started to be like, oh wait, I was always Thor. Donald Blake was a facade. And so books start following this character because he loses his powers and he gets it back later. But then the Teth Adam persona starts inserting itself and like starting to take over. And it is revealed that while Teth Adam did fall, like he is a violent, cruel individual, he is not unheroic. And he's definitely better than the complete douchebag that is Theo Adam. So he starts like putting himself in charge of this body. And it's like, wait. I need to stay in control here. Otherwise, Theo comes out and he's way more murderous and destructive. Like, I will kill an enemy of my people. I will not kill an innocent is the basic idea for Teth. And Captain Marvel vouches for him. So like the Justice League, and this is like the Morrison era Justice League. So like Orion, like he picks a fight with Orion early on because Orion's like, I know you, you're a murderous swine. And he's like, I know you, you're the dog of war. And which is a cool fight. Like the God of War versus one of the Marvels is like a really cool situation there. So Captain Marvel vouches for him. He starts this whole path of redemption. He actually ends up joining the Justice Society eventually, because his whole arc, like there's a whole thing with like his native land, which they establish as being a fiefdom of Egypt, like a vassal state called Kondak, rather than actually being directly Egypt, which makes enough sense. Like they were an imperial power that had lots of like vassal states that were under their control. And it's going to look by the nature of Egypt all being like built along the Nile, and their territory being the Nile, aside from brief periods where they like move their way onto the Arabian Peninsula. It's all going to look fairly similar, like the Nubian kingdoms to what we understand as the South, what they would understand to be Upper Kingdom, would always be would have a similar kind of structure just because it's built on the river. So like, sure, fine, whatever. Have its own state so you don't have to say like, oh, we're doing this thing in Egypt. You can be like, we're in a fictional nation. Same as doing Latveria or anything like that. Because they start this whole arc where he tries to protect his people. He like joins up with the Justice Society to do so. Actually, the first point where he starts like teaming up with them is he gets recruited by, I forget the main villain running the story, but like it included like the Rival, which was like the Reverse Flash for Jay Garrick, the Golden Age Flash, and like it was like an an Injustice Society story, and he was brought on to be part of that group. He betrays them to the Justice Society, so he sides with the heroes and like saves the day, and that's why he like joins up with them. They go on to like save a thing in Kondak, and he's like, all right, cool, we've saved a thing, and like. He becomes best friends with Atom Smasher, who is going to be in this movie. Atom Smasher is the nephew of the Golden Age Atom, and the son of his rival, I think brother-in-law, Cyclotron, who is a nuclear-powered villain, who is the reason why the Atom later developed super strength, because originally the Golden Age Atom's original shtick was that he was a short wrestler. Like, no power, is just he was good in a fight, and he was small. Yeah, and then he got hit by radiation and became super strong. And Atom Smasher's power is that he can grow in size and is super strong and invulnerable when he does so. So kind of like Atlas from Thunderbolts, he's more than just a size changer. He's like a really powerful size changer. He would be super strong and durable even at smaller sizes, and is like particularly impressive at bigger ones. Anyway, at some point, like one of his family members dies, and he's like looking for vengeance, and Black Adam's like, no, you should totally kill that guy. And so like actually kind of pushes him towards a darker path. It's like a very like it's really like trying to move these characters towards like being this sort of like more brutal Blood Knight type character.
Palpatine him.
Kind of. And so that's sort of like where they sort of establish him as being this like either anti-hero or anti-villain, depending on where you kind of position him. And that was like, all right, cool. Like he'll protect his nation, and he has like a family at one point, like the resurrection of his wife and of his nephew or son, I forget. It was Isis and Osiris were for this period during like the 52, the actual year-long miniseries that like really focused on Black Adam. But eventually, being a superpower controlled nation, because he takes over Kondak, he's sort of set up as being like kind of like Namor, as being like this regal figure who at the same time is like all about like just protecting the limits of his people and doesn't really care about the world outside, and like only will intervene if it's going to affect his people. He becomes this like statesman, but that means that he can fight with people a lot, because anything that like it's all about his nation's interests. So it's like, oh, the US needs to like get the fuck out of my way kind of stuff. And so that sort of becomes his status quo until They do New 52, wherein they kind of just do the same thing. They go into more detail about it, and there's like this whole explanation of him like being gifted powers by his nephew, who was supposed to be the champion of Shazam, and like then he betrays the nephew and takes all the power. So he was basically Captain Marvel Jr. in that scenario, but in this like weird reverse. But that's like. But it's still now going to this like anti-hero idea. Like they like this idea of him being protective of his nation and being the champion of his people, but not necessarily full on. Like he's not trying to conquer the world beyond the capacity that he would love for his nation to conquer the world. But it's not him doing it. It's him as the protector of a people who he feels has been denied their former glory. And so that's sort of the status quo for the character now. Yeah, that and weirdly he's become very popular and he's easier to explain. So not weirdly, like he's badass. So he's very easy to explain, and thus the franchise as a whole has sort of become more focused on him than actually Captain Marvel or Hoppy the Marvel Bunny or Shazam or any of the other aspects. Like to the point now where we are getting a Black Adam movie, and it's being played by The Rock, who is one of the biggest stars on the planet. So yeah, I'm excited for it, and that's sort of my take on all that. Oh, and sorry, one quick side note. The villain of this movie is apparently Sabak, which is I mentioned before. So that character disappeared throughout the Bronze Age, like I said before. He shows up again in the mid-2000s, or early 2000s. It was like 2005, somewhere in that range, where he shows up as First, he shows up in the Outsiders book, which at the time was like Nightwing and the Outsiders, where a new guy like murders the original avatar of Sabak and like steals the power, and this sort of redesigns him. It's this like Russian mobster character, like Grigory something, but they redesign him from being like this bald, kind of demonic looking dude with like a pentagram on his chest to now this like this like greasy slick back ponytail hair and like a goatee. Like he looks much more devilish,
like an 80s
now.
villain.
Yeah, well yeah, like but big buff, and then like still flaming pentagram on his chest instead of a lightning bolt. It's a really cool design. I really like that redesign because it's still simple, but it like if you're like, all right, so what would Asmodeus look like as like just as a comic book supervillain? And like, there you go. That's it. That's right. That's right there. Yeah. So so he's going to be the main villain apparently. So it means that we're probably going to get a big knockdown drag out fight between two similarly powered foes, but one who can breathe fire and the other one who can call lightning. So excited for that part for the movie.
All right.
Nice.
But yeah, I wanted to open this up for questions, like if you had any about the character or like thoughts about the movie or anything like that.
So obviously this is part of the DC universe, right? So with their variation of Superman, which as of right now I still think is Henry Cavill, can this Black Adam go toe to toe with Superman? And then my follow up question is, can Shazam go toe to toe with Superman if they ever fought? I just want to see the power range in these characters. Yeah,
I mean, so from what we've seen from the trailers, it looks comparable to what we would normally see in the comics. Like he at one point punches an airplane. He's flying faster than airplanes at various spots. Like really big explosions occur, and he's fine. The base powers for the Captain Marvel set is flight, super speed, invulnerability, and super strength. Like it's very like meat and potatoes. Like they're fine. It's like Omni-Man. Now, more recently, they've sort of played more into the lightning stuff because that was never really like a thing he would use offensively. It was just the transformation mechanism back in the day. But more recently, they've made it so that he can project it. Like in Shazam, he like shoots lightning from his hands, and it looks like Black Adam can do the same. So we're probably looking at something in that kind of category. Traditionally speaking, the Captain Marvel is pretty much like a 1-to-1 match for Superman. For the physical powers, like Superman has the heat vision and here all the sense powers and whatnot, freezing breath, and Captain Marvel traditionally doesn't have anything quite like that. But those are all secondary powers in terms of like just the raw invulnerability and super strength and super speed. Like those are really devastating abilities when used appropriately. And like the heat vision, like normally wouldn't do anything to Captain Marvel unless he's been already weakened or the fight's been going on for a while. It's usually not strong enough to like phase him up front. It's only as the fight goes on. So Yeah, normally they are pretty much 1-to-1. Some writers will ascribe different levels between them. Like, I usually put it as Captain Marvel's probably more invulnerable, possibly faster, but Superman might be slightly stronger physically. But it's really hard to say because it's... Well, and that's just like us trying to come up with compromises, because it's always like, oh yeah, we're completely matched when we run. We try to arm wrestle and nothing happens. Like, there's the big fight in Kingdom Come where it's to a standstill, and it's really only like specific tricks that can like really kind of turn the tide. Like, so like in that's where the first big time Captain Marvel uses the lightning offensively against Superman, where he says Shazam and then moves out of the way for the lightning to hit Superman. So nowadays, with him actually having lightning powers, they're magical. Superman's is not only like, or like typically is like no more invulnerable to magic than most people, but some versions actually have him being slightly weaker to magic than a normal person, which, wherever you take on that one. But then the question is the lightning that he's firing magic in that way? Like, the transformation magic or lightning is definitely magic, but the question is the lightning that he shoots from his hand, is it him using magic to make lightning, or is it him shooting magical lightning? Are two, like, those are the two different things. So like, which one's gonna like which one it is kind of dictates how much Superman's going to be affected by it. But the typical argument would be that if they fought, it's the planet that would lose. Like, they're going to be, like, in general, pretty good shape afterwards. Like, they might beat each other to a bloody pulp, but, like, the cities around them will be completely destroyed. And, like, it kind of just depends on who gets the first shot, who gets the better hits in. Like, Black Adam has benefits of being, like, trained for, either either having a huge length of life or having been brought up during a more barbaric time and reincarnated however many times that you would say he's been reincarnated. Either way, he has a warrior experience from the past to draw upon. Again, usually it would be like, oh, these two, if they fought, it's a standstill until something intervenes or changes the stakes.
I see. Yeah, that should be a fun one. If they ever put that in the movie, get them to fight.
Let them fight.
Exactly, let them fight.
Yeah.
It's what The Rock wants, so by all means, we'll want it too.
Yeah, I mean, who can say right now with the state of DC in general? But yeah, I mean, I think Henry Cavill would do a pretty good fight with The Rock. Like, I think that would be impressive.
They already destroyed cities of Men of Steel, so might as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Destroy some pyramids, why not?
I mean, big reasons why not.
So, I guess my other question is, with the other characters, obviously you already mentioned Atom Smasher, then you got Dr. Fate. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the other. Obviously Hawkman.
And Cyclone.
There is, I don't know, I was reading too, there's going to be a person named Isis in this too.
So Isis is a long-standing character in the Shazam fiction. There was actually a TV show with her in the 70s. So that is it's a sorceress type character that is part of the sort of Egyptian ties kind of thing. And the version that was in the 52 was like Black Adam's wife. Yeah. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the version that you use here, and I have no idea post New 52 where that stands on it. So,
because when I look at this lineup with Hawkman and everybody else, do they even have a chance to go against Black Adam after how powerful he is?
I mean, I think that's kind of the point there in terms of, well, they're strong, but he's stronger. But that's why Sabak is like this other villain. Yeah. Because I think what's going to happen is that with Dr. Fate, they actually do have the power to do something effective against Black Adam. So I think it would be a scenario of like, all right, you guys hold him back while I ready the spell, and that's going to be the end of Act 2, and like where they like trap him or something, and then big new threat, and they have to release him, or they're fighting, big new threat shows up, and that's when they like decide like, oh, we have to team up.
Avengers. No, I'm joking. But yeah, go ahead.
This is the Justice Society of America in this movie, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what they are. So, yeah, I mean, with all that being said, so my main question is Black Adam nowadays more of a villain or an anti-hero? Because the way it's sounding like he's more of an anti-hero. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so he has gone from full villain and like very classic, like no mustache, but mustache twirling villain with like receding hairline and like kind of like pointy, like evil features, he's on the Justice League right now in the main DC books.
Interesting.
Because he's like doing a bit of a like I gotta be better kind of tour, and like they've been drawing him hot, which I find so frustrating. Before we started recording, we were talking about the hairstyle for John Kent in the books and how I like that it looks different. They've been drawing him with like a very similar to like Superman kind of hair. And it's like kind of annoying. Like,
no.
and he's supposed to have a receding hairline. He's supposed to be Vegeta. Like, that's the big thing here.
He has to be bald, darn it.
Not bald, but he's supposed
receding
to have
hairline.
a V. Like, that's just part of his look. And like, like in the books, they're making him like look like this like young, like swashbuckling kind of like guy. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, I see. So he's definitely more of a villain. I mean, he was part of the Legion of Doom for a little bit too, right?
I mean, he's been on various team-ups for it. Like I mentioned, he was part of the Injustice Society, even though he betrayed them. And he's been on like the Villains United story. He was there. So yeah, he's been part of teams and often acting as their like big heavy hitter because he's really high up there on the DC pantheon.
All right, I'm done with questions. Y'all guys could go.
So I didn't know about the newest storyline the newest continuity storyline until like I think earlier this week, where there was like his nephew was the one who got the powers first because they liked him better, and then he shared them with his uncle. But his uncle was like, "No, I need these powers more than you. I'll do them right. We need vengeance." And he straight up like kills his nephew and takes the powers from himself. I was like, "Oh, this is dark. This got dark really quickly." Was not expecting this. I wonder if that happens in the movie.
I think they will. That seems to be the story that they're kind of going with in modern versions of the character. If you're going to develop the character as being beyond just like, a foil to Captain Marvel, and have him be in his own movie, you're going to have to distinguish him somewhat. So you might as well build on the story parts that are like truly unique to Black Adam. Like, we can very easily do a nutshell version of his story when he's just the bad guy for Captain Marvel to fight. But since this is his own movie, you might as well go into like, here's all this deep backstory for why he would even do this thing.
And let's hope they develop that well. I think that has been the weakness of DC. They don't develop their backstories too well.
They don't have good rights.
Yeah. So let's hope that's the case, But yeah, I hope this movie does well. I mean, for the sake of the DCEU, I hope this does well, and especially with the Shazam movie coming out. It was supposed to come out in December. Now they pushed it to March. So, and obviously there's going to be some connection. But I know with Shazam, he has other fish to fry like Mr. Mind and Glenn Close. Not Glenn Close. What's her name?
Helen Mirren.
Helen Mirren. Yes. Mr. Mind and Helen Mirren. That's his main baddies right now. But yeah, I mean,
it's pretty formidable, though.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope, because I think I'm talking films already. I think with Shazam, it was really good, and we talked about this, a long time ago here, and so I hope they could continue on with that, because I mean, what's the other movies that's supposed to come out? Aquaman
and The Flash,
maybe a Flash movie, right. Maybe. Yeah, but yeah, but can Black Adam be like the stronghold for maybe even for the villains for that? Maybe that's something we could see.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly serves as a wild card in terms of players. Like the comparison with Namor, I think it's common at this point, but I don't think it's inaccurate. Like I think that was a really interesting choice to when they revised the character in the 60s, Namor, that is, when they brought him back in the 60s, but it's built on his like actual tradition of being this outsider to our world. And I think having him be a statesman, but one who is both willing to act for good, but feeling like he has priorities that are more particular than just like, I need to save the world. Like, it is really cool because, like I said, like anything that like where you have political interests for his nation versus what either ours or the rest of the world or the UN or however you want to do it, then they can have friction without necessarily pushing him into fully being a villain. And he can be kind of a brutal guy. He doesn't need to be like the best of dudes, but he does serve as like a Hector, like a hero on the other side of the war.
Interesting. Ooh, I do have one question. So going back to the trailer for the Black Adam movie, it kind of shows his origin in which he had a son. Does that happen in the comic book wise? Like, does he have like a family that he has to fight for?
Yeah. So they dabbled with this with reincarnations in the 52, which again was a series that DC ran right after Infinite Crisis. That was a weekly comic, hence the name 52. That ran for 1 year, so it was 52 weeks of the year. Every week had an issue, and it was an anthology book, so there were lots of stories from different creative teams. But there was a Black Adam story going through it all, where we like dealt with the reincarnation of his family. Then more recently, they have shown this whole thing with him having a nephew that gave him the power and whatnot. I would say for a much more detailed explanation than one I can give, and one that's like directly being referenced and researched, I would watch the Death Battle video that just came out on YouTube. It's Death Battle versus Black Adam against
It was Apocalypse.
Apocalypse, yeah, which was a great idea actually as a fight, because Apocalypse also has the Egyptian ties, and that's actually all like shockingly good as like two characters to fight each other. But they go like Death Battle does a really good job of doing like here's the deep research on the character with like visual aids and like references for things. So I would definitely check that one out because they are going to be way more precise than what I would be, since I tend to look at it from a broader overview. But yeah, so that. Yeah, he has had families, and that's been like part of the motivation for it. And it's all sort of trying to tie him into this character of being someone who will do bad things, but he has good intentions.
So obviously, you like the casting of The Rock as Black Adam. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I wish this was a decade ago.
But hey, I think The Rock is in the best shape of his life right now.
Oh,
so
it's not about the shape he's in. It's just, it's almost actually the opposite of that. Like he's almost like too hulking now for the part.
I mean, he's designed to be a superhero or villain or whatever, you know. But
yeah, I really like the Rundown era Rock would have been like my ideal. But
the Rundown, wow.
Like, yeah.
So how about the other casting choices, like Aldous Hodge as Hawkman? What's his name? Noah Centineo as Atom Smasher. Do you think those are good casting choices? But Pierce Brosnan, who I'm not a fan of, but he might be good for Dr. Fate.
It's a great Dr. Fate.
Okay.
I think he's going to be a great Dr. Fate. I think that one is inspired casting. I think that the decision to have his Dr. Fate helmet have like a heads up display like Iron Man is funny, and I'll have to see it really in action. I don't know. Helmets are weird. Like that was always the conundrum of superhero stuff.
It's a cool helmet though.
I think it's cool. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I feel like he wouldn't need it because it's purely magic and it's a god. So I don't think gods have hoods. But whatever.
I mean, it looks cool at least. Yeah.
However they want to represent it, that like that's just the hard part about superhero stuff, where like we like having masks and helmets and whatnot, but we when you make a movie, you have to show the actor's face, and that was the inspired part of Iron Man and like whatever
Captain America, everybody.
Right, and the Captain America helmet like is hard to make right, but that's why like Spider-Man they had to rip it off the mask off his face every time. So like
that's true.
If it means that we can see his face a few more times when he gives lines, cool, whatever. It might look bad, and like I'm going to wait and see. I think that Pierce Brosnan is the one who stands out the most to me of the casting for it. I think everyone's probably going to be fine. I also haven't tried to go too deep on it. Like I've watched the trailers, but like I've been hurt before too, so like I've been like I'm excited for it. I really am, and I can't help it because it's like coming up, and I bought my tickets, and like I'm like yeah, but at the same time I'm also like I don't want to be like too invested and then be burned. So
yeah, no,
we'll see
for sure. I mean, given The Rock's track record, his movies haven't been that great as of late. So let's hope. But yeah, my only question is Noah Centineo as Atom Smasher. But since I don't know Atom Smasher that well, to me he sounds like another Ant-Man. But I'm sure there's differences. Yeah, do you think that casting choice is good? Because he's like kind of like a heartthrob.
I mean, he's a handsome guy in the comics too. Like he wears the mask he wears now is a nod to the original Atom design. It's not because he's like, oh, I need to wear this because I'm so hideous. Like the Atom Smasher, like that look started with Kingdom Come and then was solidified in Justice Society, which I think looks great. And the name Atom Smasher is great because it both plays a nod to the Atom and then Cyclotron, which is the nickname for that, which is Atom Smasher. But his original name was Nuklon, and he had this like very different kind of design when he originally showed up in the Bronze Age, when he was part of Infinity Inc., which was like a really cool team of all the kids of the Justice Society, but it was the 70s, so that they're all like adults at this point. So it was like him with like Jade, who was like Green Lantern's daughter, and like Power Girl, and like Huntress, who was Batman and Catwoman's daughter. Like it was a cool team. So at that point, he had more of an exposed face.
Wait, hold up. Wait a second. Go back. Huntress is Batman and Catwoman's daughter?
Yes, the original Huntress was Batman and Catwoman's daughter, yes.
Huh.
Helena Wayne.
Oh,
Interesting.
Or Helena Wayne.
that was the concept from that old Birds of Prey show in CW like a long time ago.
Yeah. They were going off of the pre-crisis origin, and then the post-crisis, everything was about like how do we fit things from before, but without like violating the new rules. And that's when they created like Helena Bertinelli, who was the mob daughter who became her own type of character. But yeah, that's why she's supposed to be a mashup of Batman and Catwoman. That's why she's just more of a general hunter of the night as opposed to a specific animal. And her motivation is that obviously she's trained because of her parents, but it's when Catwoman dies because she was forced into like one last crime, and then like that's how she ends up dying. That like motivates her to like go for vengeance and become the Knight.
Justice.
And then she's best friends with Power Girl.
Vengeance.
Where are they?
But all right. So my $1 million question is, how did it make this connection in the movies with the Shazam now? How does that connection work? Because that's going to be interesting, because Shazam's movie in itself, it seems at times, their own thing,
Yeah, it's real weird that this is its own movie, full stop. Like, so the first Shazam movie did have a reference to the character when they explained, like, oh, I had a champion once before and he was a failure. And I was curious if they were going to show The Rock, because I think at that point they had announced the casting. But they didn't. It was all in CG of like the sand effect that he was using to show off the past for his stories. The fact that they didn't then do Shazam 2 and have Black Adam show up in that, even as a post-credit kind of thing, and then get his own movie was a surprise. I would have thought that would have been how you tease out the character, the Marvel method, like the Thor's hammer in New Mexico kind of situation. Yeah, so I think it's going to be tied in. I think it's going to be like officially they are connected. I think we'll probably get a drop connecting it. It's interesting that none of the trailers have had Shazam said, as far as I can tell. Like they never show him use his magic word. And that I think is like, oh, we want to make it so that it's tied to him, but we don't deal too much with it from the broad marketing. I think they want him to be his own property.
Yeah, because the connection is going to be weird, because obviously Superman's right there, and obviously he's good friends with Shazam according to the first movie. It's like, why he's going to go against Shazam and not Superman? That to me, that's the weird thing, with all these DC things. Like, why not Wonder Woman go against him? But no, Shazam, that's going to be your enemy. Now go. Like,
yeah.
it seems
well,
that
and
way.
it's weird because we haven't had the Justice Society yet at this point in the movies either. So like there is a question of like, wait, is this really connected, or are we just not worrying about it? Because that's the other option that is out there, where it's just like, oh, it's not that they're different universes. It's just that we don't care.
Pretty much.
We have the characters that we want because it's an adaptation anyway.
But we could be wrong. Judging from the trailers, they don't really show much either. So we might get a few surprises here and there with all that. And it's just interesting to me how they're going to make that connection, why that's going to be Shazam's main villain. That's my only question with that.
He's not necessarily going to be the main villain, because he's like, at this point, while he is a dark reflection of the character, they aren't directly opposed most of the time. Like I said, in the comics, Black Adam is currently on the Justice League. So having them be rivals with shared power sources and backgrounds kind of feels like kinsmen of like some sort of noble line of, or something like that. I don't want it all to be like Game of Thrones, because I'm currently watching House of the Dragon and I'm enjoying it. But it kind of feels like the Valerians with their own dragon riders, Like, it's like, okay, we go this way, and this is, here's where we fork on this one.
Here's where we fork.
Yeah.
That sounded anyway.
Lightning forks, damn it! Lightning forks.
Oh my gosh.
Here's what especially when you talk about Game of Thrones. Anyway,
When we're talking about the Targaryens, it's not so much fork as being a straight line.
that is very true. But yeah, it's that is my main question, and I know I keep harping on this, but yeah, it kind of makes sense that with The Rock and all that, it kind of makes sense that he could be sort of an anti-hero.
Yeah,
and I think that's how the movies are showing it, and to me, it makes sense. So that's why I want to get y'all consensus. Does it make more sense that if he becomes an anti-hero?
I think that they will, at the very least, I mean, we know he's leaning into being like a guy who kills and like doesn't see himself as a hero and like is just doing what he thinks is right, but is, maybe not the best of judgment, which is weird because he has super wisdom as one of his powers, but
super wisdom.
But yeah, but it is an older world concept of that wisdom, where it's like, oh no, we definitely kill the child of the person you just killed because you don't want them to come back and hurt you later. Kind of wisdom. It's that
vengeance.
It's a very Hammurabi version of justice, and it's a very pragmatic, like Machiavellian kind of take on politics, where it's like, no, it's better to be feared than to be loved, and if it means that they can actually have a good, comfortable life, kind of ruler, ruling of a people and of a nation, kind of take. Maybe. And we'll see. I think it's more dramatically interesting to have him be different from Superman in that capacity as someone who might do bad things. And it also explains why the world isn't getting that much better if all he's doing is trying to protect a set group of people as opposed to fixing the world. Like the thing about like these superpowered beings where it's like, oh, well, if you could grab an asteroid with so much metal and bring it here and we could like not have to mine and do all this stuff, like the world would be amazing. Like can you imagine just like finding a big hunk of lithium out in the universe? Like that's your only thing you do. You fly to like the asteroid belt and you bring a Texas-sized hunk of lithium and put it right outside of our gravitational field and allow us to like strip it down, and then all of a sudden we just all have like infinite batteries and like power is just not an issue anymore for the world. Like imagine the world and no pollution from all of that. Like
that's how you get space AIDS. So we don't need that.
Space AIDS.
Well, just imagine how, like that is just like that is me pulling a thing out of the hat in terms of if you had Superman powers, how you could fix the world. Well, but my point is
wrong comic shape, Mike.
I'm just saying.
My point is that if you have a lot of like these like characters of that power class, like eventually you're like, well, why aren't you making the world a better place in meaningful ways for the people? And it makes sense if there are characters who are not invested in making the world a better place, but are only invested in doing like either specific acts of vengeance or protection, or like, or only focused on their one nation. Like that's the Wakanda scenario with Black Panther. Like, oh, we've made Wakanda like this technological marvel instead of sharing it with the world. And that cuts a certain amount of muster at that point, So again, I'm excited for it. Closing thoughts. Like when next we talk, we will have all seen the movie and it will be over on your show.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that conversation. That's for sure. And things. I mean, personally, I hope it does well. I think DCEU needs it. I think The Rock needs it. I think a lot of people need this.
I need this.
I think,
yeah. Apparently, Steven needs it too. So yes,
I think Discovery Warner Brothers really needs it.
Yeah, that's true too. And we hadn't even scratched the surface on that controversy yet, and things. And because they said that test screenings that did not too well either, and yet they canceled Batgirl and they still continue with this one. So
yeah,
and all that. But I mean, I'm one of the biggest Rock fans around too. So I really hope it does well. I mean, they've been teasing this for like how long? 8 years for The Rock to play.
Yeah, well, I mean, because The Rock has been fan casted like almost as long as I'm talking about. Like I was fan casting him then, but like people were like his name was in circulation for a long time.
But when did they cast him? I think it was like a long time ago too.
Yeah, I think he was actually officially attached like 8 years ago.
Yeah,
but it's like, oh, the Rock is like attached, and then we'll see what happens. Kind of the same way Ryan Reynolds is still attached to Green Lantern.
Oh gosh, no. Is he really? Wow.
No, not at this point. But he was for a long time. They were talking about sequels, and like, so it's like the Hollywood stuff where you're like, oh well, yeah, like they're in talks right now, and like that doesn't mean anything, guys.
But as I said, yeah, I really hope it does well. I really hope it's just an enjoyable film, and go from there, But with this DCU, which is still a mess, I just hope it does well, because then Shazam is coming as well, which I hope is another movie that does well as well. And yeah, let's just hope, because man, it's been up and down for them, and I just hope, I just hope that good things come from this.
For real. Steven, do you have any like closing thoughts?
Well, I just want to say Case is very informative, because I know little about the whole Shazam lore and Black Adam. I think the last thing I saw about Black Adam was that Doomsday Clock crossover with Watchmen that they made.
Oh, God.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I need to read more comics. But yeah.
And better ones.
Yeah.
Come on. Anyway. But yeah, like I look forward to this film. Of course, I still have hopes with the DC universe for sure. I mean, as you guys may know, I'm one of the Snyder Cut loyalists.
Oh gosh, I don't know why.
Oh my
still,
God.
For more information, go back to our 4-part episode.
yes, he still wants a Martian Manhunter movie. Wow, Steven, seriously.
I still want my Dark Side War.
I mean, I would take all of that. Like, I didn't hate it. Like, it was just like, oh, well, this is still... They just needed another movie in between. And then
It's whatever. But then this whole thing with Zack Snyder and bots and all that. Yeah,
all right. But I just want to say I look forward to this, because in the end, it's still going to be a fun comic book movie. Yes, I will be, clenching my teeth with the Rotten Tomatoes score. I do that for all the DC films. Like, oh, shoot, it's kind of like, when you get that exam back and you failed, but you still have no idea. That's what it always feels like.
how bad did you feel?
Oh, no, I did great.
It was worse.
I always do great on my exams. But yeah, I look forward to it. Like we said, The Rock is he's a pretty big star, and from what I've read and heard, everyone's excited for this film. So like we said, in the end, it's still more comic book movies.
Yeah, and just to harp on that Rotten Tomatoes scores, I do believe if it has a good score, this movie will definitely do well in the box office. That's for sure. Because the DC fans will go, but it's the rest of the fans. Will they go?
Yeah, that's the big question. The DC fans are not as big as the rest of the fans. Unlike, well, or rather, with Marvel, like there are a lot of people who are MCU only and like don't care about comics, and that's fine. But there are a lot of them, and they're just not as strong for the DC ones.
Yeah, I mean, even Batman fans is kind of like that too. So if it's a Batman, people will show up. But yeah, I think that score is really going to tell the tall tale of how they do in the box office. Because if you haven't noticed the box office as of late, they're not doing too well. Like the number one movie is 20 million. It's crazy right now.
Yeah, I mean, movies in general are just...
Everyone would rather be at home.
Yeah, the paradigm has shifted a lot. Like that, I'm also curious about that. Like there are a lot of people I know who don't care enough to go see this in theaters. And they're just waiting for it to show up on HBO Max. Yeah, because... there's so much to watch also. And like, if you're not invested in talking about it with people, you may not feel compelled to like watch it right when it comes out and you're cool with waiting. Like my TV's really nice in my living room. Like I'm fine with a lot of those scenarios. And some, depending on your theater and how comfortable you are with everything, you may not still feel comfortable sitting in a theater during for the whole movie of it. So I get it. Like there's absolutely no shame. I am seeing it in part because we want to talk about it on the podcast. And it's a Shazam thing, so of course I'm seeing this one. But like Eternals, I waited on because while I love the Eternals a lot more than most people do, I was not ready to go back to theaters at the time.
Yeah, well, times are changing now, but yeah, I think there's many different reasons what's going on, but like how with Disney Plus with some of their movies, they didn't do too well in the box office, but then once it got to streaming, then everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Which I hope that doesn't happen with this for the sake of the DCU, because if not, then they're going to put everything on live stream, and what's the fun in that? I'm still a theater purist, so
Indeed.
yeah, I still want IMAX. So,
well, Jmike, do you have any closing thoughts?
Okay, hear me out. Symbiotes.
Ancient Egyptian. Oh, scarabs. Oh, and then we tie it in with the Blue Beetles. There we go.
There we go. That's the movie I'm looking forward to. Unless Discovery wants to cancel that too. Like,
yeah. I'm. To be fair, I am more hyped about my man Dr. Fate than I am Black Adam.
Wow. Wow. Pierce Brosnan is like my least favorite Bond.
Dr. Fate is like one of my it's like Superman, Booster Gold, Dr. Fate, top 3.
This is true. That is a canon aspect of who you are.
So yeah, it should do pretty good, even if it's not like top box office of like the summer or whatever. It'd still probably be a fun movie to see, just because. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm like, it'll be a fun movie. I'll watch it. I'll have a blast. I'll enjoy it. So yeah, Dr. Fate.
Yeah. Well, and that's just good casting right there. Like that's an actor who has aged gracefully and has like good appeal in that regard. And then it's a rock-led superhero movie. Like, you know, think about this one. The closest we got to Arnold Schwarzenegger as a proper comic book superhero, not counting Conan, which was a comic book as well, is Jingle All the Way and Batman and Robin.
Nice to see you.
Which is all fine, but it's just like, oh, well, that's incredible. So I'm happy to see this. I'm sure people will go check it out. Like, we're all fascinated for it. So I really can't wait to see it and then to talk with all of you. So, Hans and Steven, thank you for coming on this show. Why don't you tell everyone who you are and then where they can find part 2 of this conversation?
Well, I'm the Real Movie Critic, and that's the CineGuy, the other voice over there. And there you go. But yeah, we have a podcast show called The Real Movie Critic versus the CineGuy, where we're the up-to-date movie reviewers because we bring out the movies right out from that weekend. So if you want to hear our consensus on Black Adam to see if it's worth going to or not, yeah, check us out. We're at certainpov.com. You could definitely find our episode there. You could join us at our Discord there too. That's where you can find the link. Or any of our social medias, at least I'll say mine. You could catch my reviews at realmoviecritic.com. Or you could like me on Facebook at Real Movie Critic, or follow me on Instagram or Twitter at RealCritic34. Real as in REAL. Steven, give your stuff.
All right, so you can subscribe to my YouTube at DirectorManProd and follow my Instagram and Twitter at CineGuySteven. And yes, do check out our podcast, and don't forget our spin-off series, Sparring Screens, where we check out the shows that have to do with movies, especially the Star Wars shows and the Disney Plus Marvel shows.
And some DC stuff like Peacemaker.
Oh, yeah.
And Kung Fu Panda.
Well, yeah, you've done some other stuff. Canon. The idea is canon. Like, is it part of a universe
exactly.
or a conversation? Obviously, people should check out your show in general, but like definitely check out part 2 because we're going to be picking that up. In the meantime, Jmike, where can people find you?
Oh, man, I'm just a guy on Twitter, doing my thing. I am on Twitter at JMike101. I post funny pictures, memes, and GIFs.
Yes, you do.
I sometimes respond to people.
Sometimes.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Case Aiken. You can find the podcast at Men of Steel Pod. Give us a follow. We put out some fun stuff. We're actually about to hit episode 100 for our Superman analog video series. So that's going pretty well there. Our YouTube channel has done really well. So check out certain POV media on YouTube and look for those, and look for clips of this show on the YouTube channel. So check that out. Also go to certainpov.com where you can find a link to our Discord server where you can come interact with all of us directly. You can get sneak peeks for upcoming shows. You can participate in polls that Hans and Steven do for their show.
Oh yes.
Yeah, particularly for the fight nights and whatnot. So
yes,
check that.
Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, so come to certainpov.com. Come to our Discord server. Interact with us. We don't bite. We don't stand over you, say Shazam, and move out of the way.
Only the right way.
Only consensually.
What is that supposed to mean?
I don't know.
There's a right way of biting?
You know what it means.
Oh my.
But yeah, so again, we're going to be picking up part 2, having watched the movie over at the Real Movie Critic versus the CineGuy. So be on the lookout for that. And until next time, stay super, man.
Men of Steel is a certain POV production. Our hosts are Jmike Folsom and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Matt Storm. Our logo is by Chris Batista. Episode art is by Case Aiken. And our theme is by Jeff Moon.
Hey, everyone. Sorry.
Hey, everyone. I just hit puberty.
No, I've just been doing too many shows recently.
Oh, man.
Or stay Wonder Woman.
Or stay Aqua, man. That's my favorite.
Or stay Black Adam. I got more. I could keep going.
I thought you were going to say man at first. Man, that movie was excellent.
It really was. Totally blew my expectations away.
I know, right? Now I really want to tell everyone about it. But I'm not sure how.
Yeah. If only there was a podcast dedicated to reviewing films and discussing the latest news and trailers on upcoming films. That would be nice.
Yes, for sure. And we can call it the CineGuy Show.
What? No. It will be called Real Movie Critic Unleashed.
No. How about CineGuy featuring Real Movie Critic?
How about the Real Movie Critic and his sidekick, the CineGuy?
CG and RMC.
RMC and CG!
The Real Movie Critic versus the CineGuy. Only at CertainPOV.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're going down, critic.
Bring it on, guy.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. In this corner, he's a reviewer who's relentless. He's a writer that's far from pretentious. He's no cynic. He's the real movie critic. It's Hans Martin Jr. And in the other corner, he's a creator who's silly, but his reviews are on fire like chili. He cannot tell a lie. He's the CineGuy. It's Steven Angulo. Welcome to the Real Movie Critic versus the CineGuy.
I see a red door and I want it painted black. No colors anymore, I want them to turn black. Come on, Hans. I see the girls walk by dressed in their summer clothes.
Song is this?
I have to turn my head until my darkness goes. You know, that was the first song they played in the movie, right?
Is it?
It was, yes.
All right.
Pretty fun sequence, if I do say so. Hello, welcome to the show. I'm Steven Angulo, CineGuy.
What's up, everybody? It's Hans Martin Jr., your Real Movie Critic, and I'm writing this like a G6. That's all I'm going to say. Far East movement, shout out. Let's move on. Let's go.
Oh, wow. An actual quick shout out. Why can't we do those more often? You always drag
because we got guests here, so we gotta keep this thing
exactly.
moving. Yeah.
So yes, guys, we return back to DCEU, but you know what? We always need some help with this. So joining us are two fellow podcasters, best known for the Superman show, Men of Steel. Also, one of them happens to be our amazing CEO. Please welcome Case Aiken and Jmike Folsom.
Hey!
Yay!
Yay!
There's the yay.
Shazam!
We should have said that instead. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But yeah, so we got the Men of Steel people here. And just a quick shout out, make sure you check out the Men of Steel episode where we give a brief history about Black Adam and give some predictions for the movie. So if you haven't checked that out first and then check this episode out. So.
Yeah, we've actually been doing a lot of Black Adam content across the board between all the different aspects of the site. So, as you mentioned, you guys were on for Men of Steel. We did a history lesson about Black Adam, the character, and we did some predictions. But like, I think it's worthwhile if you saw this movie and you're like, who is this character outside of this one movie? And that was a whole explanation of the character. And then we also did a video on Black Adam and a video on Sabak over on our YouTube channel. So check those out if you like things in tight animated formats.
Definitely. So check those out.
Go.
But yes,
right.
We are talking about the film Black Adam.
Yes.
Pretty much The Rock's baby in this. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah.
More like it's preteen. It's been a long time. When was he first announced as Black Adam?
That was like
4 years ago?
No, longer than that.
Well, so there was still some debate when Shazam came out. Like, it was like, oh yeah, all right, so The Rock is a producer. He's definitely doing Black Adam. Like, because Hollywood, like, you can be attached to it, and then they're not sure where it's going. Like, they weren't sure if they were doing a Black Adam movie or if he was just going to show up in Shazam. But yeah, I mean, people have been talking about him for 15 years, roughly. Like, maybe more.
Exactly, yeah. And The Rock has really been pushing to make this happen. Like, he really wanted to play this character big time, and all the promotions and everything that he has done, man, this was definitely his baby, that's for sure. And yeah, I mean let's just dive right into it. So what do y'all thought of Black Adam? Initial reviews. I'll start with Case. So
I would say this is a net positive. Like, the worst you could say about it is that some of the beats are fairly predictable and it's extremely comic booky. Like, there are a lot of things in this movie that were like, I would see a panel, or rather I'd see a frame and think like, man, that would probably look better as a panel on page than in the shot in the movie. Not to say that the movie looked bad, just that there were spots where I'm like, oh, this the way this is all framed looks really good as a comic book panel. And it looks okay as a movie, but like there's so many spots that I was like, this feels so comic book-y, and I love a lot of that. Like, there were some great things going on there, but like net positive with some quibbles.
Steven, what are your thoughts?
All right. Well, as you may know, I enjoy comic book movies because I find whatever joy I can in them, except Morbius. That was a disaster.
Yeah, right.
We don't talk
about Morbius.
No, not at all. Case, we are still so very sorry that we dragged you into that. My gosh. But yeah, this
Between that and Master of Disguise, man.
Yeah, that doesn't top Master of Disguise.
Oh
yes.
My god! Wow,
That's true. I would say Master of Disguise is worse.
Wow, I owe you a drink, Case, and now we live close to each other, so there we go.
That's true.
Oh my gosh! But yeah, it does start off kind of slow because it has those characters who are like, hey, these are our protagonists, care for them. Okay, who are these people? They need to grow on me. But then once the comic book actually happens, I'm intrigued, I'm watching some characters that I'm familiar and unfamiliar with come to life. And yeah, it's not like the best comic book movie out there. No, it's still fun. It's not the next Black Panther, Endgame, or Snyder Cut. No. This is just something to enjoy.
No,
sir.
No, let's not go
Don't
there.
start with me. Okay. Don't start with me.
No, we're starting with that if you're going to bring
Don't
him
start
up.
with me.
No.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, look. The Rock does an excellent job as a comic book character, and he truly made it a blockbuster, all right? It was fun. Everyone else was tremendous. I mean, come on. Aldous Hodge is Hawkman, James Bond is Dr. Fate. Come on. It was fun, guys. That's all we can say.
Okay. His name is Pierce Brosnan, not James Bond. He hasn't been Bond for a while. Okay.
He will always be Bond.
I was going to say, he's always Bond in my heart.
Exactly. Thank you, Case.
Y'all could have him, yeah. Yeah, y'all could have him. But, okay, I guess I'm the one that's got to be the negative person.
But wait, J-Mike, what did you think of this movie?
What? That's crazy, sir. It's crazy talk. You know what you're talking about. I unfortunately did not witness the amazingness that was this movie. So,
yeah. So we're gonna have surface conversations, but like when we get to spoilers, I very much want us to like see if J-Mike can predict how the movie goes, because like on Men of Steel we were pretty close. So I'm curious if you can get all the beats.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
I'm pretty
cool.
sure J-Mike was already spoiled beforehand. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, like some of the details have been spoiled, but I'm also just curious if he can like correctly like lay out the
Sir,
structure.
All I was concerned as soon as I saw the trailers was that Dr. Fate's in the movie, and There's my 3 top superheroes in DC is Superman, Booster Gold, and Dr. Fate. So,
Wow.
Booster Gold, not even Batman?
no way. Booster Gold is awesome, sir. Don't discredit
Green
Booster
Lantern.
Gold.
Not even Green Lantern.
Not from the last comic book I read.
Booster Gold's awesome. I will not stand for this later. Anyway, but yeah, I'll wait for the side comments about this later. Then I'll jump in. Hans, go for it. Do your thing.
Man,
Well,
this
as
is
I
the
was
first
saying,
Hans. This is the
yes.
first. Somebody who has not watched the movie is actually no. That happened with Audie one time.
Yeah, no, it happens with Ade a lot. But
Yeah.
yes. But
or
as for
Eddie
me-
would see the movie in quotes, and you have to ask him like, all right, so 20 minutes in, 30 minutes, when did you fall asleep?
yeah, exactly. How do you always be falling asleep? Like you be hearing him snore after like 20 minutes. Yeah. So, but as for me, I did not like it. Okay. Let me say the good stuff first. The Rock was great as Black Adam. I thought he was good, and I did like the JSA or the Justice Society, even though they weren't really developed as how they became an agency or whatnot or why they were important, but they were so cool because they were there. All right. But everything else, I couldn't enjoy it, and I wanted to enjoy it. I wanted to enjoy this film, but the story was very uneven. It had some thematic issues with different things, and it felt a little uneven. And I thought some of the acting, like the rest of the people, it's like they didn't even mean it too, especially the little kid. Well, we'll talk more about that little kid later.
Oh.
Yeah, and things. But the biggest thing, I thought the CGI was very subpar. And there were some moments where I'm like, ooh, that doesn't look good. And that's what was really disappointing for me. I swear, I thought the director of this, which is Jaume Collet-Serra, I thought Zack Snyder possessed him because of all those slow-mos that happened during this film and everything, which really, really annoyed the heck out of me.
I will say, I feel like the use of slow-mo was appropriate most of the time because it was super speed effects.
Maybe, but
I do agree that the CGI, like, there were a lot of shots that, like, I was like, ooh, I don't know about that from the trailer that did not get improved by the time it made the screen.
No, there was a lot of scenes where you could really tell that it was green screen too.
Okay. Quick question:
Yeah.
Was it Superman upper lip bad, or was it like?
I'd say some scenes kind of
as bad as that. I think it'd be bad as
No, I would say this: some scenes it kind of looked that way. Some scenes, it's
like, here's the thing: it was better than CW. It was worse than Star Trek: Strange New Worlds.
Oh man, that's one way to put it.
Was it kind of like Matrix Reloaded, or not as bad?
I mean, at the time, Matrix Reloaded was awesome. Now you look back on it, you're like, ugh. This one, it just came out, and I'm like, ugh. And that's not good for a big budget movie for me.
Well, do you think it was because it was in the theaters, and by the time it gets to like HBO Max or anything else, they'll have it touched up and everything, or?
Well, but that doesn't make sense. I mean, like, yes, they might do some of that at some point to touch it up, but like fixing it in post is not a good method with a movie that's getting a theatrical release.
Yeah, let alone that it's gonna be on IMAX and everything. Like, you would think that the special effects would be a lot better. I mean, even Batman versus Superman CG was a lot better than this one, if you ask me. Yeah, I'm going there. I am going there.
I agree. There were some practical things there, so there we go.
Yeah, and so that really, really annoyed me throughout the movie. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some scenes that were awesome, which we'll get to as well. But some of the characters, as we already mentioned, I thought Hawkman was great. Dr. Fate was really, really good in this, if you ask me. Well, I don't know about Atom Smasher and I forgot what's her name again. Is it Cyclone? Is it Cyclone?
Cyclone.
Yeah, it was Cyclone. Okay, I thought I had that wrong, but yeah, it was Cyclone.
I was against Nolan Centineo being in this movie from the beginning. Like, come on, this guy is typical teen rom-com-y. I don't want to see him in a superhero movie.
I mean, he was a comic relief, but some of his jokes were a little missed for me, if you ask me. But yeah, I mean,
you and me.
That part actually had me laughing, but yes. And so, yeah, as I said, I really wanted to like this, but I ended up kind of like being disappointed with it. with a lot of things, and I'm surprised that this has like a 90% audience rating in Rotten Tomatoes. I really am. I kind of agree more with the critical side of this, which was like what now, 30% now or something around there.
It's still 40.
Oh, it's still 40. I think it got down to 30 for a little bit, but yeah,
like really, like on a strict thumbs up, thumbs down scenario, you give it a thumbs down. Like you don't. Like I have issues with this movie, but like I still am like, yeah, I was happy to see it. I enjoyed it overall.
I don't know. I might have to. I really debated this too before I gave. Well, I hadn't even given my rating yet, but yeah, I was really debating about it, and I was like, no, I expected better. My expectations were actually pretty high on this, and I think that's what led to it. So, but yeah, I mean,
gotcha.
That's what it is. But I'll go ahead and give my real rating and things. But yeah, as I already said before, with a lot of things, I was just genuinely disappointed. But I don't knock on The Rock being Black Adam. I thought he was one of the high points of this film. And with all that said, I give it out of 5 my real rating of 2.5. The facial Rock slow-mo expressions, which if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So.
My gosh. At least it ain't Mummy Returns. Oh my god!
It's just it was weird. It was weird. That's all I gotta say.
Oh my gosh. Well, yes, I agree with some points. Like this movie isn't perfect. No, not at all. But here's the thing: I did not go to see it with high expectations. I learned my lesson after Love and Thunder. My gosh. But yeah, if I can scooch away from the bad and focus on the good. I still had a nice time, Some of the action sequences were a lot of fun. I didn't mind the song choices. That's why I sang Painted Black in the beginning, because that opening action sequence was awesome. I'll save that for spoilers. But yeah, everyone did a pretty good job what they were given, and The Rock, you know him. He knows how to make a blockbuster. So I'm gonna give this movie a final rating of 7.7 Crown Sabak.
Case, what's your rating?
Yeah, I feel like a 7.5 is kind of an appropriate area for it. Like maybe a 7, depending on how much you care about the CG and I guess it's a question of like the novelty versus the quality of the story beats. Like I think most of the story beats were pretty well done, but they were ones that we could expect pretty well. Like there's one big area that I was like, oh, I'm surprised at how hard they went away that I thought they might go, but I just didn't think they would go that hard. And that was, fine, but like not necessarily my flavor for Black Adam. But in general, I enjoyed it. I thought there were some really effective uses of Black Adam's powers, the way they presented him as being comfortable in his space, I thought was really good. And I enjoyed most of the things that were kind of new elements to the DCEU that this brought. So yeah, I like I said, I feel like a 7.5 is pretty much there for me.
All right, Jmike. Oh, never mind.
Sir. Sir.
Don't sir me.
Okay, how about this? Just so he's involved, Jmike, how do you feel today?
Therapy?
I don't know. I'm trying to get him involved, Hans. I'm
going to be involved later when I do the guesses for the stuff.
Yeah.
And see how close I am to the story.
Yeah. Oh boy! All right.
Well, let's head to the spoiler elevator and see how much Jmike knows. Knows. So yeah,
knows. He can't even talk.
Yeah, I can't even talk.
That's how much you didn't like this movie, Hans.
Yeah,
it's just
destroying. It's really that bad for you, man. I didn't think it'd be that bad. Like I thought it'd be like really dumb fun. But like
there was worse movies, but yeah, I didn't really enjoy it. There were worse movies than that.
Hans, it's not Morbius. Be grateful.
Not by much.
Oh man, this is way better than Morbius.
Exactly.
Maybe by like 2 teeters or something. I don't know.
Anything's better than Morbius. All right, in the elevator. In the elevator. Here we are, guys. Are we going to Conduct?
A Conduct. Okay, take a wild guess who's coming in. So
I don't know, Vinny.
No. Here we go. Ding. Do you smell what the Rock is cooking? Hello,
Hey,
gentlemen.
Rock.
Hello, gentlemen. I see that you all saw Black Adam. Is that right?
Yeah, we did.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you saw it or not, because it is a great movie, and that's what it's really about.
Doesn't
Yeah,
matter
Rock.
if we paid for the tickets.
You got me there. Because yes, it does
Yeah,
matter.
I think.
Oh my gosh. Well.
Wow,
say,
you really
Miss-
stumped the Rock case. Wow.
Oh my
Who stopped me or not? I am still the
Very-
greatest.
Yes.
Alright.
By the way, Rock, I got a question for you.
Yes.
How do you feel that J Mike didn't see the movie?
Oh, we're really getting hard this today, aren't we?
Yes,
Okay.
we are. Well, first of all, who is J-Mike? That's the main question. Do you really
the
think
guy
he could go against me and everything that he does, even watching this movie? Huh? Who are you? Show yourself.
He's the really tall guy with the glasses over there.
All I see is just an orange dot.
I'm J Mike.
I am
Spartacus.
J Mike.
It doesn't matter who J-Mike is, because really, we made about 67 million. I think that's pretty good. That's all right. It
Mr.
doesn't matter
Rock?
what's all right or not.
Mr. The Rock, how does it feel to go from being the most electrifying man in entertainment to the most electrifying superhero in the DCEU?
It feels great, because who doesn't want to see Black Adam? I've been casting for 10 years? So it feels great. Yes.
Sir, I've been vouching for you as Black Adam since the Scorpion King.
I want to say it doesn't matter, but it does matter. Thank you, kind sir. I'm pretty sure you're not
Well-
J-Mike. So, all right.
Well, there we go. What's next for you, Rock?
Oh, have you heard about a movie Shazam?
Oh, you're gonna be
It
inferior.
doesn't matter if you heard about it, because you can just watch Black Adam right now. Okay, guys, I must go.
Oh, this is your floor?
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed it is. All right, guys, here I go. Do you smell what the Rock is cooking?
And he's out. Wow.
He didn't even wait for the doors to open. He just ripped right through them.
Yep, that's what he does.
Gosh. Hans, we pay for this. God, my gosh.
Yeah, I know. We have insurance, Steven, though. It's okay. All right.
You better have that Jumanji money lying around.
Yeah, maybe. All right, let's get out of here.
Yeah, right. Let's get out. You have been warned.
Shall we do what J-Mike knows?
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
we shall.
J Mike. J Mike, if you had to guess what the big story beats are, and I know you've been spoiled on some stuff, so you can throw those in there and you're not coming completely blank.
No,
But,
my only big question would be about what's the chick and the kid. I think one's his niece or something or his wife. Is it like the reincarnation of his wife thing they do in the movie? I don't know about that part.
Are you talking about like Hawkman and Hawkgirl?
No, I know he's talking about the
Oh.
civilians.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So let's start from the beginning. How do you think they would open this movie?
They didn't do like the 10,000 years ago in like the dusty parts of Egypt.
That's exactly what happened.
I mean, he pretty much predicted it, yes.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. They're like before Egypt. By the way, the year they give is actually after Old Kingdom was founded, and prior to that, Egypt was already a civilization. So do with that what you will. But
Okay.
they're like before Egypt, there was Kondak.
Conduct, yes.
Conduct.
Did they do the whole?
so
So did they differentiate between like his nephew getting, or is his nephew or his son getting the powers first, or like do they straight up like go like his son was killed and therefore he asked for the powers?
before anyone says anything, what do you think they would do? Like this is where you
Okay,
guess.
they're not gonna go like straight comic book and like he kills his nephew to take the powers for himself type deal.
That is true.
He's
That
not
is-
snapping
that
the
is
kid's neck on screen.
Right,
Like,
right. That part is true. But how do you think they would present it?
as something bad happening to his family or something, and him asking for the powers to like right the wrongs.
Close.
Yeah.
So they tease it at the beginning. Like they actually try to keep it vague at the top of the movie, and then they move to modern day. So they do the back in the day of Kondak, and then they like set up the myth of Black Adam, and then they cut to today.
So they do the Steve Rogers getting zapped forward like 60 years to the future thing, where he's like a fish out of water.
Yes, that
Yeah,
is
actually, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
No,
yeah.
In a way,
that's a big
is.
part of this movie. Actually, they
Yeah.
also, which I should have expected, but I didn't really think about it. They do the Steve Rogers effect on The Rock,
Yeah.
where they make him like look like skinny, and, like he's still big, but like it's not as pronounced as like the Steve Rogers effect. But they do like make him smaller in his
Yeah.
human form.
Oh, in Conduct?
Yeah, in Conduct,
Yeah.
which surprised me. I shouldn't have been surprised, but it still did.
Did they? So did they do the whole thing where he's Black Adam the entire time, and that he can't go back to his original form anymore, or else he dies?
No, he chooses not to up until a point, but they do confirm that he can turn back.
Okay, cool. Boo.
Yeah. All he had to do is just say the name, and that's it.
Shazam.
Shazam. You know. So.
Shazam.
But yeah,
All right, so that's the prologue. That's like the. But then, how do you think the first act goes?
Oh, him going around causing all kinds of confusion because he doesn't know where he is. So from the trailers, he's like blowing up everybody. Like he's freaking like he's the aliens from War of the Worlds. Or he's zapping people and they just explode and turn to ash.
That's pretty apt, but it's the break into 2 where that all happens.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is like an unfair part. There is a little bit of a civilian section before Black Adam is like freed that occurs. And that sort of like rounds out Act 1. And then Act 2 is like Black Adam being like in the world.
But I guess my question for J-Mike is, what were they looking for? Were they looking for Black Adam or something else?
There is always a part in Act 3 where a villain comes out of nowhere that you had no idea was going to be there, and then that's the actual villain of the movie. Kind of like Wonder Woman, where what's-his-face came out of nowhere, and he's a big bad of the movie. Was it Ares? Yeah,
it was Ares.
Yeah, I'd say it was more like Wonder Woman 84, where it's like a civilian is revealed to be the actual villain, and he wants his greater power.
And
I mean, well, to be fair, if they did that, that's kind of like the original comic book, where they send his dad goes, his family goes, or what's his Billy's family goes, and then the guy who sends them is the first big bad. Then what's his dude's name? Case, what's the Black Adam's name in that book?
Teth Adam?
Yeah.
Or Theo Adam are you talking about Power of Shazam? Or
Yeah.
Are you talking about?
Yeah, the Power of Shazam.
Where he's Theo Adam in his human form.
Yeah.
As a reincarnation.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go with the reincarnation story. I'll say that part.
Well, that's no fun. Yeah. So I think did he really go the civilian thing where the civilian wants to do it? Because that's just kind of lame.
Well,
I feel like if they're going to do that, like Sabak or whatever his name, it should have been like the
kind of went with the Indiana Jones approach, right? Trying to find something, but two people are trying to find it. You know, this powerful
wait,
thing.
you said the right word a second ago, J-Mike. So build on that.
So is it Sabak really? Is it really Sabak the entire time?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool.
No. I mean, and we guessed that on the Men of Steel episode.
Yeah. Well, is it him like in human form, like manipulating stuff behind the scenes?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say more like terrorizing, but yeah.
Well, I mean,
no. The human form of Sabak is the big player because he's trying. So, let me throw the scenario out there. If you're going to use a character like that in a movie like this, when would you actually introduce the powered form of Sabak?
Act 3.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, because like you gotta. Well, from what I heard is that they heard that people were kind of tired of like the old like origin stories, so they went in like thinking that people already had a grasp of what was going on, so they didn't have to introduce Hawkman, Doctor Strange, or Doctor Fate, Doctor Fate, and Atom Smasher, and what's the girl's name?
Cyclone.
I almost said Twister. It's not a Twister. It's Cyclone. They kind of went in kind of like thinking that people had a gist of what was going on.
But who set them out?
The JSA?
Nope.
Oh, so
Well,
who
they
sent
are
the
the
JSA out?
Yeah.
Yeah, who? Yeah, why are they brought into this situation?
I have no idea.
Should I give him a hint?
No.
How
really wanna
deep a lore are we gonna
taste
go here,
it?
Case?
Do you really want to? Do you really
DCEU
want to
stuff.
taste it?
Yeah, that's
Oh, is it what's her face? Is it Amanda Waller?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Did you give him the song?
No, I was like, he's like, it's not. I'm like DCU. I'm like, okay, only person who be capable of doing that is Amanda Waller.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's
Is,
exactly
is there a
Now,
cat
so
this
what
project
do you
behind the
think-
scenes
Well, so what do you think the JSA is being brought in to do?
to contain him and bring him in?
Who is him?
Don't say it's a bot because I'll be very upset. But The Rock,
Right.
to
yes,
bring The
yes.
Rock in, I'm like, if
Yeah,
she knows
so
about
as-
Sabak already, I'm gonna be upset. But I wouldn't put it past Amanda Waller because it's Amanda Waller.
Exactly. But and that sparks my issues with JSA. I thought they just formed their team and it just went out. It not really developed like what is the JSA all about, you know? Now I know it's a Black Adam movie, but if you're going to introduce a lot of these people, I feel like that was very underdeveloped, if you ask me.
I mean,
I think
we'll come
they
back
might
to
have
that because
mentioned
I
it.
have some thoughts about how like I think it hints at a cool thing, but I would agree that it doesn't quite get there in this movie. But yeah, so all right, so establishing that Sabak is the Act 3 thing and Act 2 is the JSA coming in to deal with Black Adam. How do you think Act 2 goes?
so shenanigans ensue. He starts causing havoc. Amanda Waller gets many phone calls, and she's like, "Don't worry, I know some guys." And then she makes phone calls to it looked like Xavier's School for Gifted Children from the from the trailers, and I was
got
like,
the
"We're going
same
straight
vibe.
X-Men here." It's even got the plane coming out of the front yard, and I was like, "What the heck is it?" Anyway,
Yeah.
but Dr. Fate comes down from his tower. Do they show the tower?
They don't.
Waste. But
He just shows up in a car. He just-
in a car.
Yep.
I take it back. This movie is not looking great so far.
Oh my gosh.
He's got to have a symbol. He's got to appear out of the light and everything else like that. Come on, man.
I
But,
did have a question about Fate, and that's for Case. He's a comic book guy. So in the movie, Ken Nelson could take off the helmet willingly. I thought like once you put the helmet Fate decides when to take off the helmet. Is that like
It depends on how much of a partnership you're in with the helmet.
Gotcha.
Normally, you can take it off pretty freely because so like Young Justice amplifies the whole like you're basically possessed kind of situation.
Yeah.
And part of that is because it's not Kent Nelson that we're really seeing at any point in the movie, or rather in Young Justice. And he seemed to have more of an ability to take it on and off than any of the other hosts that happened later. That was created for drama for that. And more in the comics, like here's the avatar of Fate like wielding it, and it's more of a partnership, so they can kind of freely do it. Not to say that there isn't friction, but it's a little bit more give and take.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's really cool. You guys should go read those.
So the JSA is brought in to deal with Black Adam. Shenanigans ensue. What would you guess is the end of Act 2?
A standoff or a big brawl, and then explosions happen and like somewhere else in the city, and you're like, wait, well, we thought you were the bad guy. And then Wonder Twins unite. We have to team up to fight the big bad guy.
Twins.
Wait, what?
That's pretty close to the break into 3, but there is a detail that there's a twist, or a story beat, I should say, not really a twist per se, that shifts things. But
So wait, so in this iteration, Hawkman isn't like the reincarnation of the ancient pharaoh guy. He's just
he is, although
he's the
don't hint at any
archaeologist?
connection. Well, I don't know if they say what his like current career is besides just being rich, because like the Xavier mansion that you see is Hawkman's estate.
Oh, it is? So he's just boo. Because like he's either like the archaeologist who finds the stuff and he puts it on, or he's like the Pharaoh from like way back in the day.
No,
Didn't really
it's the
mention
Pharaoh
those.
approach, but they don't go too hard on any of it.
Yeah, they really don't. If it did, it completely missed me. So
No, that's actually a wasted opportunity because they had both Fate and Hawkman. They could have easily been like, "Oh yeah, we knew you back in the day, dude."
Yeah, like this is, he could have been like, "Hey, it's you guys." And they're like, "Sup?" But like they didn't do that apparently.
They do not do that.
Or they could have done it, or like Dr. Fate and Hawkman were the ones who like imprisoned him in the first place. They could have done that.
Well, right, they could have done that. But yeah, so Act 2, like, yeah, so the JSA shows up, the shenanigans ensue, and the one big thing is that at the end of Act 2, Black Adam actually surrenders and transforms back into his Teth Adam form.
Really?
And is imprisoned by Task Force X. And so he is put into...
Wait. Suicide Squad's in this too?
No, well, no, but or rather, like by whatever the agency that Waller's people serve. I forget her name, but the woman who is now married to James Gunn, who was from
Harcourt.
Harcourt, yeah.
Harcourt.
She gets a cameo there as the person who like checks in Adam.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, but then you're right. Act 3, like Sabak rears his head, and they have to release Adam. And then team up, and that's Act 3 right there, which is
lots of punchy action.
Well, this is where I have my issues too, but yes.
Yeah, and then if you had to guess with a character like Sabak, who is a demonically powered villain character, how would he up the stakes for action sequences for the less powered characters?
He split himself up.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't do the seven deadly sins approach from Shazam. Which now that I'm saying that out loud, I'm like, man, he is actually very close to just like what Savannah is in that movie.
Yeah, I was like could have
really
done
close. No, so he like starts raising the dead, like and like the damned, and like there's like a zombie fight.
Are you telling me? Case, are you telling me we were that close to having a Blackest Night thing in this movie, and they didn't do
close,
that?
Yeah.
How dare they tease me like that?
I mean, they're more like demons than like they have like skeletal looks, but there's also like a lot of like fire and like brimstone effects going on for them.
You're saying it could happen.
I mean, but they got beat up pretty well just by civilians alone. So I don't know how powerful were they. So like people were literally beating them up with sticks and bars.
Oh, so they did like the whole was it Spider-Man from like 2001? We're like, we're in New York. You take on one of us, you take on all of us. And they like try to jump.
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's like Kondak won't fall, and like they like all the people of Kondak rise against them.
Yes, they beat him up with sticks and stones, literally. So
yeah. It's basically the big battle scene in iRobot.
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a pretty succinct explanation, and then you've been spoiled on the post.
Oh yeah, you think the one time I was like, I really want to go see this, and then like, hey Jmike, have you heard what happens at the end? You jerks. You jerks.
Yeah, you need some new friends, Jmike.
Was that Ben? It feels like a Ben move.
No, that wasn't Ben. I don't think he went to go see this, but like my other friends were like, oh, we thought you saw it already. I'm like, I would have told you if I saw it already, you jerks.
Yeah, you need some new friends. Yeah, you need.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, hey, Superman's in this movie, in case you guys are wondering. At the end.
Yes. Yep. They bring back Henry Cavill, and he made the announcement that he's officially back as Superman on Twitter this morning.
They already started like putting it together, like the next 3 Superman movies.
A lot of people are like, "It's so exciting! He's back as Superman this morning," and I'm like, he was in the movie.
I know, like. It's really no secret if you watch the movie, but yeah.
Right. Like they're saying they're developing these movies now, which is cool, but they haven't shot it yet. So
I mean, I feel like we would have known it if you've been paying attention of The Rock over and over saying, I can't wait to finally get to fight Superman later.
right.
Oh man, it's great to see like the balance of power shifting to Black Adam's here. Superman's going to have a run for his money. And like, all right, we get it.
And honestly, that was really poorly like kept as a secret, even beyond the Rock stuff, like like overtly hinting at it all. But like I was seeing screenshots like weeks before the movie came out with like Henry Cavill, and I was like, all right, I know that he's going to be the teaser in this movie. Like, all right, it's still exciting to see him. Like he looks great. He's got a little bit of the S curl, and he's got like a much brighter blue and red costume.
Thank
it looked really solid.
It looked cool. That scene was cool, the way. And he just comes in and goes, "We have to talk," to Black Adam. And so I'm kind of looking forward to that battle between Superman and Black Adam, if that ever happens.
It's never really a battle. It's always like Shazam and Superman teaming up to fight Black Adam.
I mean, yeah, whatever. It should be a lot of fun. And to me, that should be a lot of fun if that ever happens. So that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but before that Superman revealed, Black Adam was talking to Amanda Waller saying, well, you broke out of prison, but you're in your own prison in your own city. Just don't step out of your boundaries. And of course, Black Adam is very defiant. Is like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then
who's going to stop him?
Nothing on this planet can stop me. And she's like, I can pull some strings and get something that's not from this planet. Yeah, and that's when Superman descends down.
And that's when Superman comes in. So I thought that was kind of cool, kind of. So
it's a good line. That post credits I thought was perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that was my most fun moment. Of course, the whole theater was cheering when that happened.
Yeah, because people. Granted, he's a great Superman character. He just had some terrible movies.
Yes,
to be in for his Superman character.
I may have to agree. He just needs some better direction.
He needs better direction and better writing for actual Superman movies.
More than anything, the writers, that's for sure. Not David S. Goyer.
I mean, I don't think we need to rehash like the previous movies. Like, I think that there are pros and cons, and that there was a certain lack of oversight in terms of how the Snyder project went along from the start to the finish.
Yes.
But we're in a new era. It doesn't really matter. Like, even people who are like, oh, is this going to canonize the Snyder cut? It doesn't matter. Like, the broad strokes of the theatrical versus the Snyder cut versions are close enough that like any movie they make forward, they don't need to reference specifically. Like, Darkseid shows up, doesn't really matter. Like, they hinted at Darkseid in the theatrical cut. The Snyder cut showed him. It doesn't change anything there. Like, there's only a couple areas that are different, and honestly, I don't think we're going to be dealing with Cyborg's father like at any point in the near future.
God,
just because.
I know it'd probably be cool if the reveal is that was Earth 2.
Oh, if they went hard on like an infinite universe scenario, that'd be cool.
But they're still doing Flashpoint, so.
As of right now.
Yeah.
Look, none of that matters. None of that matters. We're talking about this one and like implications for Beyond, but like the Ezra Miller stuff makes it all weird. The Discovery stuff makes it all weird. It's hard to really predict what's going to actually happen going forward. But in this movie, as evidenced by the fact that Jmike just like pretty much got all the major story points, like the thing about this movie is that it was fairly predictable. But then you have The Rock, who is charming, and you have like cool stuff being introduced here, which all was fine, even if the CG could have been better. And then some good moments in there. And then let's have zombies for everyone to fight, which is, I think, an area where a lot of people were like, "Well, what's going on here? Why are we doing
I mean, he's
this?"
literally the devil, so like,
yeah.
Like, that point's kind of like, oh, it's gonna happen. Just let me know when it happens.
Yeah, this dude got a pentagram right in his chest. Yeah, that's nothing says evil than that. But
he's a DC Mephisto. I get it.
Okay, shut up, Steve. All right, okay.
Let's not go too far.
But
yeah, so they set up that Intergang has taken over Kahndaq at the start.
Oh, really? They brought an Intergang?
Which I thought was a nice.
Intergang.
They do Intergang, and they have. they go hard on them having like super tech for why they're able to like control everything. And it was interesting from the standpoint of Kahndaq is presented as a modern day world, but by virtue of super science existing, it felt like a totalitarian post-apocalyptic or like dystopian kind of like Blade Runner future. Like it felt very 1984. And what was, I think, cool is that, oh, that does make sense that like people living in other parts of the world where the US has been like a colonial power might feel that way about us. And that's kind of what's going on here. The problem is, just like with the issue of Black Adam, is he a villain? Is he a hero? They try to not have too hard of a line there. Like they try not to cross any parts that are like too anti-US or too Black Adam's the bad guy. Like we said, Black Adam doesn't kill his nephew or his son for it all. Black Adam is pretty firmly like, no, he was fine. Like he's a douchebag, but he's fine.
Pretty much. But
Yeah.
he changes his mind a lot too.
Well, I mean, that's kind of part of his character too, though. Like, it's all for like, oh, if it benefits me in Kahndaq, I'll do it.
Yeah, it's just amazing how quickly he changes his mind to me. But yeah, right.
Yeah. So, like we said, Black Adam has this whole element of being a man out of time. Like he's imprisoned and like is released to save this woman while they're trying to find the crown of Sabak, which is like how you have to use the crown as part of like the ritual in saying Sabak and turning into a champion. So when he is released, first he like just wipes the floor with these like inner gang people, and then gets into a fight with their like military, and they just like show up pretty quick with like helicopters and stuff, and he doesn't have a problem, and it's cool. That's where like I think the CG is really good at him very casually flying at super speed. So like he's just kind of chilling in midair, and then we'll just like move over to a thing, but it won't be like big bursts of energy. It's like all just like very kind of comfortably moving. Oh, I'm gonna go destroy this thing. Oh, I'm gonna go destroy this thing. Oh, I'm gonna go do this thing. And I thought that was really cool. Like I think that sells the raw terror of fighting someone who is super fast and vulnerable and can fly.
And he becomes a hero to those people too. Like people actually look
and
at him
that's
like
the start
a
of him
hero.
having this kind of like heroic arc for the people of Kahndaq. But they do this whole thing where he's a man out of time, and those moments where he's with the kid feel just like Arnold Schwarzenegger in T2.
Yes,
like
I was thinking the same
I was thinking that too. I was like, is this Terminator?
like
This is Terminator.
there's a
isn't it?
point
This is-
where they're so one thing, when he like wakes up after getting knocked out, because they establish he has a weakness to the substance called Eternium,
Eternium,
which
that's
is
the name. Yeah.
which is just his kryptonite.
Really? They made
Yep.
Yeah, like it is the metal that they use to make the crown of Sabak. It is the metal that powers like all these like things. It's the MacGuffin metal, like, and it's not the only MacGuffin metal, because also Nth metal is in this movie, because Hawkman straddles the line on like all of the versions of Hawkman, and it doesn't really matter because they don't go deep. But like his ship is made of Nth metal, so like it's there's special stuff all over. But so they established that if they fire a rocket that has like Eternium in it, it can hurt Black Adam. So like he's pretty tough, but like you could take him down if you had the right materials at the right time. So he gets knocked out at the end of this like first fight, which is really that's really the break into two of he fights Intergang and then gets knocked out. And when he wakes up, having been taken in by the family, or like by this woman and her son and her brother, who were like trying to find the crown of Sabak and move it so no one could find it, which I don't know why they did that, since like the whole like all they did was make it easier to find by way of like digging it up. I would be like, no, don't steal it, put more rocks in front of the door. Like it was such a like, this has to happen because it's a movie kind of moment. But when he wakes up, he can talk to them instantly. And while yes, it's always been a thing where it's like, oh yeah, like Captain Marvel, by way of like the wisdom of X, is able to translate any language. I would have liked a few minutes of him like listening before he started speaking, and like a little bit, because like he's supposed to have been just woken up after 2,600 years of being in some kind of tomb, and I would have liked to feel like, oh yeah, his wisdom catches up, like this is a superpower thing, and not just like, oh yeah, he woke up and he speaks English already. Cool.
Maybe English was the common tongue back then.
Well, or it's Kandaki, because like it's a Kandaki kid. But like even then, like language changes. Like it's not even 2,600 years ago. Pardon me. It's 4,600 years ago because it's BC. So it's been a real long time. Like modern Egyptians don't speak ancient Egyptian. Modern Greeks don't speak ancient Greek. In the Greek scenario, it's even closer. Like, do you want to talk about like what English sounded like 1,000 years ago?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think we're good.
Yeah. Well, he didn't know what sarcasm was, at least.
Right, yeah. And they try to explain like how he compares to other superheroes, and he doesn't like there are moments where he kind of is like, I don't know what that is, and there are moments where it's where he's like honestly like trying to process things, and spots where he doesn't care. But they try to explain to him like, oh, you should have catchphrases, and at first he's like resistant, and then he starts like being like, all right, so I say catchphrase and then I kill them, and like trying to clarify with the kid, and that's where it like really feels Arnie versus like Arnie and T2 kind of thing, which
pretty much. Like the little kid was inspiring him, teaching him all these things about what's happening now.
No, don't kill him.
Of course, the kid had all these Batman, Superman, Flash stuff in his room and all that. So,
indeed,
yeah.
Also, that was Osiris, right? The superhero.
Yeah. It's pretty clear that if they do a sequel, that's where they're going with it.
Yeah.
Wait, the kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, the mom is Isis. I know that.
Okay, that's where I was like, because I knew I heard reference to that somewhere, and I was like, yeah,
they don't do it in the movie. They just, but it's very obvious that if you know where those go, that they can do it for the sequel.
Yeah.
Also, thank God they didn't, because can you imagine if they did, and also Sabak is so similar to Savannah in Shazam?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would just be Shazam part, like, it's already a Shazam sequel spinoff movie. It would be even more hardcore that, and I'm glad that they didn't quite do that.
Yeah, for sure. So, can we talk about the JSA?
Yeah.
You know, as I said before, I felt like, you know, the JSA alone was very underdeveloped. We don't know what's their main thing is. Are they superheroes or what are they? I kind of thought they were superheroes, you know.
I think they mentioned that they work more internationally. That's what they mentioned in the movie.
Is that what it is? But
I think that's what Hawkman said.
I don't know. I think that was a little underdeveloped.
It might be because they're coming in with Dr. Fate as one of the like old guards of it, and also Hawkman has this like Xavier style mansion and like a jet that's underneath his that comes out of like the big lawn and everything. Like it felt like it had this sort of like old vibe of like, here's a club of like pip we're a society for justice, and we'll bring in the people we need, and there's members of ours all over, and we all have our mansions respectively, and if we'll come and gather, like kind of vibe. And I thought that was actually a really cool way to reinterpret the JSA as a different thing than the Justice League, because like the thought that, oh yeah, there are a lot of like really weirdly rich people, or at least people who have resources, and that they could have like, you know, you could have all these members who have their awesome bases. They don't need to have like a base together because they all individually do. Like, could be a cool vibe. It's a vibe. It is not like text of this movie though.
And and they get recruited by Amanda Waller for that. The only thing is, if they were like a group from before, you know, why did they need new recruits like Atom Smasher and Cyclone? You know, don't they have like older beings other than Dr. Fate? You know, I don't know. I got a little confused with that.
They do have Jay Garrick, the OG Flash.
Yeah, or Alan Scott, and have Green Lantern there. Like, in terms of going into the scenario, because they go in actually very aware of who Black Adam is. Mm-hmm. It's revealed that they have access to old text that the public do not have access to. So they are more familiar with the actual events that occurred back in the day than what like the legend of Black Adam is, or what Legend of Teth Adam is. Pardon me. To the Kandaki people, which is like kind of also appropriative, where it's like this old English man walks in and be like, I know what really happened, not you savages, you know, which is there as a text. Like, I think Pierce Brosnan's great, but there is this whole like colonialist vibe, and they keep on like butting up against it, but there's still moments where it's like, yep, let's have all these like white people show up to tell the brown people what to do, and that's like a bothersome element of the movie, even if the movie is fighting back against it at times.
Yeah. But with that being said, I thought Dr. Fate and showing his power, I thought that was one of the best parts in the movie, you know, is seeing him at work. With all
Fate,
the inclusions.
He's so powerful in this movie, and it works so well.
It did.
He's the OG.
And it was so cool. And with Pierce Brosnan's voice, everything just, it was cool. Everything just worked out very, very well. And really made Black Adam, okay, I can't talk today. Wow. Really gave some difficulty for Black Adam with his power, and things, with his illusions and all that.
Yeah, I mean, Fate basically was giving 95% of the response that the JSA was bringing in this scenario.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, he's explaining
also,
it while
talk
he's
about
attacking.
a D&D party, by the way. Like in terms of who you've got statted there. Like you've got your wizard, and then you've got like kind of, I guess, your fighter, your barbarian, and like maybe your bard between those three. Like like some scenario of that, but like Hawkman is like clearly like a fighter type, and like Atom Smasher growing big is kind of like your barbarian. And as with all D&D stuff, when we're talking about 20th level play, the wizard's the only one that matters.
Pretty much. And not only that, Cyclone was like the healer too. She was like kind of like the doctor thing.
Yeah, that's why I kind of feel like she's the bard. She was throwing down traps using her wind, and she had like some cool stuff that she could do with her. She had like nanobots as the explanation for how her powers work, which could do a lot of other stuff besides just wind stuff. So, she was an effective contributor. Atom Smasher did nothing. Like almost every single. He had one time where he hit Black Adam pretty hard, but aside from that, like
and also Hawkman too by accident. He came out a little backhand by accident.
Yeah, Atom Smasher is like you mentioned, is the comic relief. He very much plays like a Spider-Man or a Flash in this movie, where he's being like, "Oh no, did I do that wrong?" kind of stuff. Like. And it's exacerbated because his mask looks like Deadpool with the white eyes and everything.
It really did. Or like that Baron Zemo mask. That's what it looked like. But yeah.
Yeah, I just mean like with the white eyes effect. It was like the Deadpool movie mask.
But another kind of like, how I say, Easter egg of sorts, his dad made a little show up.
Yeah.
Which was
His
Henry
uncle.
Winkler.
Uncle.
Yes, his uncle.
Yes.
Oh, that was his uncle. Yes, his uncle.
Yeah,
who gave
I
him
was
the suit.
inspired. I was so happy at that cameo, and I did not see it coming.
No, nobody saw that coming. Yeah, I was like, oh, hey, that's Henry Winkler. Oh, look at that. It's like that. So that was kind of cool,
Yeah, it was weird because they called him the original Atom Smasher when it was like, no, dude, just call him the Atom. Like, you're fine. I probably they want to leave it open so that you could have like the Atom, the Ray
Atom?
Choi. Well, no, like the Atom, like the one that's hinted at in
the shrinking
in the
guy.
Snyder Cut.
Yeah. But every time he uses his powers, he always has to fall down or get knocked out. It's like he's kind of useless.
He causes more collateral damage than he does any sort of effectiveness.
Exactly.
So it's a true Justice League movie. Gotcha.
The funniest part is when he was in human form, he always has to eat something, and then he came in with like a bucket of chicken out of nowhere. And then Dr.
I
Fate,
love that moment though when he like
Dr.
just
Fate
shows up with it.
Yeah. It was like one of the it was just comic relief, and it was
he like walks into a serious meeting with Black Adam, and he's like eating chicken just in the background.
It's like, okay, well,
yeah, I want to say this: Atom Smasher was not effective as a superhero, but I think he was effective as a character in this movie.
Yeah, I guess that's fair to say. Yeah.
But it is weird that they bring in two rookies, and then it's like, all right, we got Hawkman leading this team. He brings in Dr. Fate, who is very old and is seeing the future, and the future is not going to go well for several of them. Is like this whole vibe throughout the thing, or not vibe, like this whole story arc for them. Hawkman should be dead like 30 times, by the way. Like, I get that he's wearing nth metal armor, but for one thing, he's able to hit Black Adam in a meaningful way, which is wild. And they never try to be like, oh, well, it's like the gauntlet that he uses against Superman in Public Enemies or something. Like, it's just, no, his punch matters. And I get that his like mace and stuff have like energy effects, and those probably would do something. But also, he keeps getting hit in ways that should have taken his head off.
Yeah. I agree. Like getting backhanded by Atom Smasher. But
yes.
At things. But even then, Hawkman really showed his true grit and power when he went up against it. And when he realized that he's outmatched, then he started using diplomacy against Black Adam, which worked. It worked.
It worked, but that's the bummer that they didn't go into the idea of Hawkman and Fate having ties to the ancient world as well.
Yeah.
Like, that would have been a really good spot to like deal with some of that. And I realized you'd have to explain way more about both of them. At least you'd have to explain way more about Hawkman.
Yeah.
Like Fate, they actually explained enough that you could be like, oh yeah, a previous avatar of this helmet. You don't need to say anything else.
Mhm.
Like, you don't even need to be like, this is the original Naboo. Like, you can just be like, yep, no, so, like, there have been many Dr. Fates. Remember the Dr. Fate back in the day? Like, but they want to keep this, like, veneer of mystery for how things go, because at the beginning, you're presented as, like, oh, the champion of the wizards was Black Adam, and he's the one who, like, they summoned to protect Kahndaq. And then you find out that that is just the story that's been passed down, and that the champion was actually his son, and that his son gave up his powers to save his father, like transferred his powers to his father when he was dying, and then while he was in his human form was killed by like their enemies. And like that's the twist right there. Which bothers me, because Black Adam, like, this is the thing I was like, I can't believe that this happened. This is that moment of like not wanting to have your cake and eat it too, where it's like he's a badass, and he's also has done no wrong. Like, while he kills bad guys, like he at no point is like he never does anything truly despicable. And like they keep on being like, oh, but he's like really more of a villain, and it's not really the case. Like, he never did anything really that bad. The worst thing that occurs is collateral damage.
Pretty much. They don't really show him as a true villain, really.
Right. And so he doesn't have an arc of like becoming really that much better. He just becomes like more invested in everything. And that's where it's like those are the spots where I'm like, man, they could have just a little bit more.
Maybe they're saving that for later,
cool arc.
when Sinestro shows up.
Well, but like, again, the time to set him up as being he was a villain, and that's why he was imprisoned, because he's imprisoned. He's explicitly like, so he like confronts Sabak, or the first avatar of Sabak, who actually is prevented from even putting the crown on by Black Adam destroying the capital that they're in, like the castle, and causes this devastation, and like it's terrible, and a lot of people die, but it's not really like it's Black Adam's fault, but it's not his intent. It's just he explodes with power, and a lot of things get destroyed. And later, there's a point, and the reason why he gives up when the Justice Society is confronting him is that he gives up because he accidentally hurt someone when trying to save them. And that he's like, oh, my powers. It doesn't make sense. Like, he doesn't have enough of a real arc of like villain to hero in this movie. And I love villain to hero stories. Like, Piccolo is my favorite character in Dragon Ball Z.
Gohan's true dad.
Like, Anubis is my favorite character in Ronin Warriors. Dinobot is my favorite character in Beast Wars. Like, I like heel face turns. I really do.
Dinobot.
Like, there's some of my favorite stories, and Black Adam had the opportunity to do that here, but they don't go hard enough on it, and as a result, like, it's fine, but I wish the arc was more, and it feels like the arc is less because they wanted the character to be accessible to everyone and not have crossed a line too hard for anyone, and that feels like the kind of thing that The Rock would have pushed for.
Yeah. Well, what we do know is that they really had to do a lot of cuts and a lot of his kill scenes to make it PG-13 instead of an R rating. And I'm like, I'd rather see the R rating on this, which I hope they do like a director's cut or something about that. But
yeah, I mean, this is a movie that should have had an R rating.
Yeah. And I think that would have made his character a little more effective if you see how brutal he really is. To be quite honest, I think that was
like
missing.
There's cartoonish violence in this.
Yeah,
like he
exactly.
catches a grenade and puts it in someone's mouth, and then like cut to him like flying off in the distance, and there's an explosion little ways in the background.
Exactly.
Like it's goofy violence, and I would have liked a little bit more because this is a character where it would have been appropriate.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it kind of lost his essence a little bit because of that. I think it would have been better if they kept those scenes. But all right, shall we go to the third act and how much I didn't like it?
Well, I do want to comment a little bit more about CG before we move on from the JSA stuff, because the JSA, this is why I compare it with Strange New Worlds. I love the design of a lot of stuff going on in this movie. I love Atom Smasher's look. I love Hawkman's plane. Like it has this very cool black, like black glass look to it all with like orange highlight neat like lights. Yeah. And I think the aesthetic is really good. And it reminds me of Strange New Worlds, where they're doing a lot of those effects to sort of like take the 60s Star Trek and make it look modern and sleek and without being like all like lens flares.
Yeah.
And they do those here, but the CGI budget is not up to snuff. And like, just every time where there isn't a set, and there are a lot of spots where I'm very happy with the practical sets that they're using, but every time there isn't, it just doesn't look that good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's hard. It's tough to say. It's for me to really enjoy it when you see these type of things. It really was an eyesore for me, to be quite honest, with a lot of these things.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. Like I said, it is better than like CW, but you do have to like just accept like, yep, this is a movie. None of this looks
exactly.
real.
It's a movie, not a
pretty much
basic channel, TV series. So, yeah. But yes, the third scene, which I think we're really I want to hear what Jmike thinks is like. How do you think they defeat? Is it Shabbat? Right?
By the power of friendship.
pretty much.
More diplomacy.
Yeah, diplomacy. They got really high diplomacy rolls, and they all hugged it out at the end. How do they defeat him? So they got him to say his name?
No.
I
wish it was that way.
Spear through the chest.
Okay. Let me ask this. Did somebody sacrifice themselves to defeat him?
Who?
Well, you tell me.
One of the heroes sacrificed himself?
Who? And how?
Oh, man. If it was a Hawkman, I'd just laugh if it was Hawkman.
Well, that's who they hint it's going to be for a good chunk of the movie.
It better not be Dr. Fate, or this is over now. It is over now.
Yeah, so Fate does... Yeah, so Fate sacrifices himself, and then Hawkman briefly is actually using the helmet of Dr. Fate to and then the helmet disappears at the end, clearly to go find a new host. So Fate will be back, but Kent Nelson, this was his one and done.
How dare they?
Honestly, that's not a bad spot for Fate as a character to be in. Like, to have Pierce Brosnan as Kent Nelson, who can show up inside the helmet of Fate for whoever the new actor is if they reuse the character. I think that works fine.
Yeah, because it's like, how many? It's been like, because there's been a bunch of Dr. Fates, and there's been a couple of girls too. Yeah, there's been quite a few actors, but I forget who is the most powerful one. Because, like you said, it's the whole duality of it, where it's a give and take thing, huh?
I said your guess is good as mine on that one. I don't
know. It's the whole thing of Naboo and the whole Dr. Fate thing, where I forget that at one point, like, the guy had worn the Dr. Fate helmet, or the helmet, for so long he had basically like learned most of the powers and stuff.
Yeah.
So he was pretty much a heavy hitter by himself without the helmet at one point. But yeah. Oh, I guess they set it up for the next Dr. Fate. Anyway,
yeah,
whatever.
I mean that's like future speculation anyway. But Pierce Brosnan is great, but he does sacrifice himself because he keeps seeing flashes of the future. He's like, I keep seeing everyone's fate is the line they keep on talking about. And what he sees is Hawkman dying, and he sees that there is another path, and he does so. It is very Doctor Strange, like the way all of that
very
kind of plays out
too, if you ask me.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is balanced.
It is. Well, yeah. Again, this entire movie, we predicted on Men of Steel, and then also here, like all of the beats we get. Yeah. Black Adam is imprisoned, and this is that like compressed timeline that is just wild.
Yeah.
So Black Adam surrenders, is imprisoned by Waller's team in a prison where he is like submerged, but with like a breather, so he can't use he can't say his magic word ever, which is like, wow, that's pretty intense right there. Weird choices. So he's imprisoned. Dr. Fate frees him remotely by way of magic when Sabak shows up. And then The Rock, when he gets himself freed, is then attacked by guards while still wearing like the breather mask, but he's like now outside of the water chamber and fights his way to the water, like to the edge of, like, it's a submerged base on top of everything, rather than taking it off and saying Shazam, because I think they just didn't want to like deal with like, where's the lightning coming from? So they have a fight, and this is the requisite he's lost his powers fight that you have to do with a character like this, where, okay, he's got no powers, he's fighting guards, he's got a thing on his face so he can't say his word. He fights his way to escape into the water and then like swim up, and like there's a scene where his like dead wife and son are like, we love you, Dad, like you're actually a hero.
So
And it's so cliche, and that's like when he rises up into the water, like just like Superman in Men of Steel, where he's like floating on the water, like he's like floating there, and like he says Shazam, and like that's a cool moment right there. And he flies and engages with Sabak, and it's exactly what I said of two equally powerful characters, one with fire, one with lightning, and they're fighting with each other. And ultimately, because Hawkman's able to distract Sabak with the helmet of fate, Black Adam's able to get the kill shot in.
And the way he killed him, oh my gosh, that was brutal.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal shot. Again, this movie could have been an R-rated movie, and it would have like worked better.
But yeah, he pretty much ripped him apart. Like, it was like,
I don't really want to see this movie anymore now, because
No, I mean, again, like the Dr. Fate stuff in here is great. Like and Dr. Fate is arguably the second most important character in this movie.
Yeah, I could agree with that. Yeah. To me, Dr. Fate really had me from the beginning of everything. He was definitely an interesting character that I was definitely engaged in. That's for sure. More than anybody else other than Black Adam, I agree with that.
Great to hear.
Indeed.
Yeah, so then everything's good. Black Adam's like, I'm going to protect Kahndaq now, which he always was saying beforehand, so I don't know why he was okay with it. Again, he didn't actually kill anyone by accident. He just like hurt someone kind of by accident, possibly. Like, it doesn't even like really matter. While the whole fight with Sabak is going on, he's like raising legions of the damned, and the kid goes and does the same sort of like hand gesture of like Kahndaq's light, and he does like this pyramid hand gesture, which is what like Adam's son also did, and that like inspires the people of Kahndaq, who are all like in this other corner of the city question mark to like come and join where his mom and his uncle are like fighting the zombies. Like, where it's just like, no, we were over here. Oh, there's zombies over here. We're not gonna let them push us around.
All right, let's get our sticks and stones and bars, and beat them up. But
there were some funny moments though, because like Dr. Fate will tell people how they die by way of like, your fate is to die by X, and like one of the characters is like, well, I know how I die now, so I'm not gonna die here, it's fine.
Yes, an electrician dying by electricity.
But but don't you think when the kid tried to hype up his people, he was acting very underwhelmingly?
He's not the strongest child actor.
No, definitely not.
That's
but
and it's hard. It's really hard, especially for how big a part he has. And there's some great scenes earlier with him when he's this little scamp running around this military controlled city, like riding around on a skateboard. Enjoy him, but trying to be like an inspirational figure, and he doesn't have the right speech for the performance that he's giving.
Yeah, see, and that one really blew my mood a little bit. I was like, oh man. This is
and they also don't set up either a spirit of community before, like they set up like the crowds cheering for Black Adam, but like having more of a network of people who would actually know what he's talking about or even care would have been kind of nice. Like it's very paint by numbers at the end of this movie.
Yeah, I guess that's the way to do it. But so that's pretty.
Oh, and there's a blue laser in the sky, like as part of. I forgot about like.
Purple laser,
like I mean, not a purple, right? But like we get a beam in the sky. Like we're full on doing like the classic stuff of like superhero movies here.
Yeah.
But it's him opening up the gates to hell, but it's all the same.
Yeah. But that's pretty much Black Adam in a nutshell, I guess.
There you have it.
And things, but well, I guess we could wrap things up and give our final thoughts. I'll go first with my final thought. I have a feeling I did not like it, but if I watch it again in HBO Max or whatever, I think I might change my tune a little bit. All right, with this, it's just there was a lot of things I just didn't like from the get-go, and it really affected me watching this film. I guess it's because I did have high expectations. I do love The Rock. I do think he's perfectly casted for Black Adam. But there was a lot of things in this movie that they could have done better and make it more cohesive, if you ask me. But I don't know. I guess if I watch it again, I might have a different opinion. Who knows? So,
Indeed. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's still pretty entertaining in its own way. And that's something we can accept.
Case, final thoughts.
Yeah, like I said, it's a net positive. I think that I'm surprised when anyone like flat out hates it, unless they're like a hater on a superhero movie in general. Like I could see if the superhero formula really bothers you, that's going to be an issue. It could have been more violent. This is the appropriate movie to do that. You know, like this is like Invincible, where it's like, yeah, this is the time to like have the ramifications of superpowers like play out. But while it is a little clean for what it should be, and the CG is not perfect and it's paint by numbers, I think that The Rock is really fun in this. I wish The Rock was a little bit younger. I've said that before. I think that he really looks more like Iback at this point now. Like he's so big and bald, and like just has like he looks like just like a little bit further than the character. But that's fine. And the character looks great. Like when he comes back in the third act, he's got all of his gold trim and looks amazing. And I think that's like, he really looks like a very solid Black Adam there. So I'm very happy with that. I just,
And they did give that scene where he's sitting on the throne, that famous picture.
Yeah, there's a really good.
And then he destroys it, which I thought was hilarious. But he
he's not a king, Hans. He's a protector.
Yeah.
He's not a
ruler. So it's a net positive is what I'm going to say.
All right. Jmike, any final thoughts of the movie?
Yeah, I was like, oh man, it's gonna be like I said on the other show, like, oh man, this would be a great, fun, dumb movie like Aquaman. Lots of excitement, lots of explosions, lots of punching. I laughed, I cried, it moved me. Now I'm like, after you guys Dr. Fate dies, I'm like, you know what? Kind of like
that's the part that make you cry.
It still sounds like a lot of fun. I'll go see it eventually whenever I have time, because time escapes me nowadays. But
I see that. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still looking forward to seeing it.
All right.
And then
there we go.
I'll mourn Dr. Fate another time.
Right, when everybody's seen it like 10 times, you come in.
I'll be like, why? Why did he do this to my boy?
Why? But yeah, I would definitely like to hear your final consensus once you do watch it. That's for sure.
I mean, I'm not that harsh for Critic, except on certain movies. But like, but yeah, I'm still banking it's going to be a really fun time. I'm sorry you didn't like it, Hans.
Like I said, I might change my tune. Maybe there's a director's cut. I think I might like it better. We'll see. With that, I have a good
your
feeling.
R rating.
The R rating. I think that's going to change my tune a little bit. But I mean, that was just. I guess I just had too high expectations. I think that's what it was. So for me,
you got to go into things with low expectations. Therefore, you're never disappointed.
Yeah, I should have learned, because this is a DCEU movie. I should have known, but
yeah, you always go with low expectations. That way, you're pleasantly surprised when it works out better for you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true with a lot of other movies, if you ask me. So, like all those Netflix movies that we've been watching this year, my expectations were low that I end up liking it. So, alrighty. Well, Case and Jmike, thank you for coming on and enlightening us with everything. Well, mostly Case, not Jmike this time. But
it's always a delight having you guys here. So, give out your plugs. Go right for
please.
Yeah, so I can be found on Twitter at Case Aiken and on Instagram at Quetzalcoatl5. In addition to Men of Steel, which you should go listen to that episode, even if you've listened to this whole thing. Like we do a really good job of like talking about the history of the character. You can find Men of Steel over at certainpov.com, as well as Another Pass, which is a movie show that I do with Sam Alisea, and all of the YouTube stuff for Certain POV Media is generally speaking me. So check all that out. We've got Superman stuff. We've got clips from some of the podcasts. We've got side quests, fun stuff. Check that out. And then go to certainpov.com with other great stuff, like what Jmike works on.
Yeah. And what is that, J-Mac?
Is it my turn? I don't know.
That's your
I
cue.
I
kid.
feel like that was a pretty obvious handoff.
I kid. Yeah. I'm on Twitter at JMike101. I also am the little brother to Case's big brother on Men of Steel. I'm there asking questions and getting my mind blown a lot of times because he knows so much more comic book stuff than I do. Sometimes I'm just like, I like comic books. No, Case is like, no, I love comic books.
Yep. He's definitely like the human comic book Google.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, indeed.
But I will forever claim that I stumped him twice. Twice.
There we go.
I will wear that crown forever. Yeah. We have fun on our show. You guys should go check it out whenever you guys get a chance to.
Yeah,
Indeed,
for sure. And hopefully Scruffy Nervers will come in the future. Yes, I have had that.
We're still waiting for that crossover case.
I know.
But yeah. But thank you guys once again. It's been a fun conversation. Actually, I kind of like that. What J Mike knows, I kind of like that game.
That was pretty fun.
Yeah. I think we should do more.
Steven, as long as you're okay with cutting out the big gaps of time where he's like thinking, I think that'll make a really good segment.
I might just leave it because I'm lazy, so we'll see.
Well, there you go. There you go. Yes. All right, Steven, take us home.
All right, guys. Hope you all enjoyed this episode. Be sure to join us next week. We check out the films The School for Good and Evil and Ticket to Paradise, our Halloween special. Look at that, Hans.
Hold on. What was the first movie?
The School for Good and Evil. It's already on Netflix.
What is that? I'm not going to watch the Irishman thing.
It's not playing anywhere near me, so I decided to switch it up.
That explains it.
A horror movie. Talk about The Irishman.
Yeah.
It's more like a fantasy Paul Fake movie. That's what it is.
Wow. This is not okay. Well, we'll deal with that next week.
Right. We did all our creepy stuff last week.
Yeah, we did. All right.
We did. All right. Well, until next time, I'm Steven Angulo, the CineGuy.
I am Hans Martin Jr., your Real Movie Critic.
Featuring
Case Aiken.
And J. Mike Folsom.
There we go.
Nice. We love.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. In this corner, he's a reviewer who's relentless. He's a writer that's far from pretentious. He's no cynic. He's the real movie critic. It's Hans Martin Jr. And in the other corner, he's a creator who's silly, but his reviews are on fire like chili. He cannot tell a lie. He's the CineGuy. It's Steven Angulo. Welcome to the Real Movie Critic versus the CineGuy.
I see a red door and I want it painted black. No colors anymore, I want them to turn black. Come on, Hans. I see the girls walk by dressed in their summer
what
clothes.
song is this?
I have to turn my head until my darkness goes. You know that was the first song they played in the movie, right?
Is it?
It was, yes.
All right.
Pretty fun sequence, if I do say so. Hello, welcome to the show. I'm Steven Angulo, CineGuy.
What's up, everybody? It's Hans Martin Jr., your Real Movie Critic, and I'm writing this like a G6. That's all I'm going to say. Far East Movie, shout out. Let's move on. Let's go.
Oh, wow. An actual quick shout out. Why can't we do those more often? You always drag
because we got guests